Steve, you gonna do the scripture? Sure. You ready? Sure. We're gonna make sure I'm gonna be on Liam. Make sure he's with us. Kenny, have you gotten a link from Ron yet? Well, if he's on there, do you have to see if he's? And we got another 5 minutes to the time that I told him.
Yep, he's here.
Okay.
He's on.
Okay, can you see the screen good? Hear it's good?
I can hear you good, and it's live streaming right now.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start as we speak. We're going to have a prayer, scriptures, and then.
Hey, Ron, can you hear me?
I just want to make sure that everything is good for you.
Ron,
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we just are going to have each of you, I guess, as you speak, you pop up on our screen. And Darren here asked KL if he's okay with this live streaming on YouTube. What about you?
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can we see that? I'll wait to. No, sure.
We need to go back to KL, so, because we're gonna start getting you looking at it.
To speak, so it triggers the chain.
Yeah. Okay.
Just tell him.
Thanks for coming today, everybody. Appreciate you being here. We're gonna start with our scriptures first. Well, he's talking right now. You ready for prayer? Okay, here you go.
Holy Father, thank you for this beautiful day. We're able to gather. I ask that whatever we are doing here, may it glorify you. We operate at your peace. Just thank you for your love and for just help us to see where you're working in our lives. And your great love draws us to your Son, and then the Son draws us back to you. Father, we just pray for all those that are hurting. It says in your word that you're near the brokenhearted, though it may not seem like it when we're in our pain. But your goal is to help us push through that pain. Father, also show us where that pain is not. Sometimes the pain is not real. The enemy, he has the ability to give us pain, emotions, thoughts that are not our own. And I ask, Father, that you reveal that, and then we wish your Son in Jesus' name that it be removed, that healing begins, because healing broken spirits, broken hearts. We just thank you, Father, that your mercies are renewed every day. Woke us up today, and we have today. So help us to walk in you. Thank you. Ask you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate
you. Okay, Steve, let's have our morning scriptures.
All right, today is April Fool's Day for the things that want to pay taxes. God has to let the souls here absorb your word in the way you intended. Proverbs 15, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness it breaks the spirit. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. There is much treasure, but in the revenue of the wicked is trouble. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the fool does not do so. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he loves him who follows righteousness. Harsh discipline is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates correction will die. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. So how much more the hearts of the sons of men? The scoffer does not love one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise. A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is broken. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he who is of a merry heart has a continual feast. Better is a little with the fear than great treasure with trouble. Better is dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. A wrathful man stirs up strife. But he who is slow to anger allays contention. The way of the lazy man is like a hedge of thorns, but the way of the upright is a highway. A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish man despises his mother. Folly is joy to him who is destitute of discernment, but a man of understanding walks uprightly. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude counsel they are established. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season. How good is it? The way of life winds upward for the wise, that he may turn away from hell below. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but he will establish the boundary of the widow. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant. He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house, but he who hates bribes will live. The heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and a good report makes the bones healthy. The ear that hears the rebukes of life will abide among the wise. He who disdains instruction despises his own soul, but he who heeds rebuke gets understanding. The fear of the Lord is instruction and wisdom, and before honor is humility. That concludes today's problem.
I'm going to let Randy introduce. He actually has two fantastic speakers today. I'm so thankful that he is letting us have opportunity to talk to him and ask questions. Okay, Randy, here you go.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so we got two speakers here. One is Ron Adams, who's on the screen now, and I think when KL starts speaking, it'll automatically switch over. Is that right, Ken? Yeah. Okay, and so first is going to be KL, and KL, I'll let him describe in more detail what he does, but he's basically getting us out of the system. And I've gone through the process. My brother-in-law's done it. My wife's doing it now, and several others that we kind of spread the word to. But he has a fantastic system that is very well established in law, and he can tell you all about it. But it's better than everything else out there that I've seen. And so we've been working together about 6 months, 9 months now. No, it's been longer. Anyway. I've known Ron a little bit longer, and we've become pretty good friends over this. He does debt validation and debt remediation, and basically he exposes how he gives you a process that either you can do on your own, or he can help you, or he can do it for you. And that process is to challenge the debts that you think you have, but that aren't really debts, and then how to challenge them on that, and they never respond. And so there's a process in getting it advice out. So when it's his turn, I'll let
Recording in progress.
So Kale, go ahead. You got the floor.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, Randy's one of my newer students. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I started studying this at least 20 years ago. my first contact was a guy by the name of Jordan Maxwell, and he sent me the book Cracking the Code and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to learn as much as I could, so I went around the country. Yeah, whether it was Canada or England, John Harris, Robert Menard. I studied from Winston Shrout, Gordon Hall, Jack Smith, Brandon Alexander, just about anybody I could to try to figure this out. Just like, what probably most of you are doing is trying to figure out how this came to be, because I think everyone definitely could tell you that something's wrong with this system. This is not the same system that we were either brought up on or we were taught in school. That we were taught that we have the Constitution, we have these Bill of Rights and this kind of thing, when it's pretty obviously that's really what's not happening in this country or the world today. So I did as much studying as I could till I could fit all the pieces together, with the help of a couple other gurus, Eric John Phelps, a guy by the name of Rourke, who brought it all together for me. I've been teaching it for over 10 years, been very, very successful, because I teach it through what I call learning trust law, and which is the highest form of law on the planet. And I'm glad you guys kind of started with the prayer, and the group seems to be somewhat religious, because I wanted to show you that, your relationship with your creator is a trust agreement. Okay. Where, let's just, I was brought up Roman Catholic. So, I was brought up, God sent down Jesus to have certain duties and obligation. He died so our sins could be redeemed, so we could have benefits and go to heaven, which is the very definition of what a trust is. Okay. God being the creator, he created all things on earth. I think the proof of that is obviously that we didn't create this stuff. He did for our benefit. Okay. And he sent down Jesus. That's what a trustee would do. Okay. That he had to perform certain duties for our benefit. He had to die so our sins could be redeemed. And that's exactly, again, what a trust relationship is all about. Okay, here, I'll show you that. I have diagrams I usually teach with and that kind of stuff. So I call that the sacred trust. But, what you have to understand is God's law is also called trust law, which is also called natural law. And I'll repeat it, that it's the highest form of law on planet Earth, let alone the universe. And you might not think so, but even the bad guys, the deep state, the courts, whoever you want to point your finger at, believe it or not, they actually follow trust law to the T, because they know they are held accountable by it. And that's really what runs this world, either through treaties. Treaties are another example of trust. Constitutions are trust. Everything is run under trust law. So I teach it to people through a trust law perspective, because if you can understand trust law, then you'll understand more of what's going on. And again, most people can obviously see that something's amiss. Something doesn't add up in the world today. You see politicians that seem to get away with murder, corruption, stealing, whatever it is. And you keep, like me, going, how does that happen? How's that possible in our system of government, supposing our founding fathers set up? So usually I can talk about several issues for, all day long if I wanted to, but I picked basically the subject that currently the reason why things are the way they are. And again, I want you to understand the how and the why all of this happened, is that we're under martial law. Now, you can call it a soft martial law, you can call it military law, but basically military occupied soft martial law was instituted on March 9th, 1933. All right, now let me give you an example. In 1973, Congressional Record report by Frank Church. This is a quote. The United States has been a state of declared national emergency since March 9th, 1933. A majority of people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule, including me. Okay, but we're not told that. We don't understand exactly what that means. I'll explain, what happened on March 9th, 1933 a little bit later. But let's get to military martial law. When a citizen is governed by military power, he is not governed by the soldier's code of military law, but he is said to be governed by martial law, and this law is entirely different than, your normal constitutional law. These are just some of the facts that prove America is under a military venue martial law jurisdiction. Everyone knows what a zip code is and kind of understands through whether it's David Strait or other people that putting a zip code down on an address sometimes can place you or you be volunteering to be under that jurisdiction of the government you like, which is really true. Zip codes are military venues. That's why they were put into place. Okay, is yes, to try to get you to volunteer into their jurisdiction. It's like if you know, most of you, I guess, or whatever, maybe down in Texas, if you walked across the Rio Grande River, you would understand that your constitutional rights aren't enforceable in Mexico. That's because you're in a foreign jurisdiction. Now, what you don't know is that jurisdiction is just not geographical, that you can contract into a different jurisdiction as if you walked across the Rio Grande and you're now standing in Mexico when you're really standing in Texas, which is what I'm trying to tell you is why you might not get those constitutional rights in court that you think you deserve. Okay? Only under military law does Congress have the statutory authority to combine equity, admiralty, maritime law. So in 1938, when they brought in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedures, they merged a lot of the law forms at that time that used to be separate. So they put common law under admiralty, under maritime, called it kind of a Roman civil law, but it's all into one. So if you go into a courtroom and ask for common law, you're actually asking for their statutory military law. Okay, the only other law form on their books today since 1938 is equity. And I'll get into that maybe at another lecture, but there's really two law forms. If you want to go back and understand equity, if you read the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1, it tells you that at that time, two law forms were brought over from England, common law and equity. So most people always hear that and think that common law was the only thing that came over. Well, that's not true. Equity was another law firm that also came over with our founding fathers, and they instituted, and it's part of our Constitution. This is why it's still available even in today's courts. Okay? This is an example, headline news in the American Juror Society, which is, you know, a judge and law firm magazine, 1996. Quote, judge admits to War Powers Court on the front page, May 7th, 1996, a municipal court judge, Carol Wardell, in a traffic case. Now, the defendant refused to enter the bar unless she removed the flag. Judge Wardell stated that she will not protect his rights under the War Powers Act of March 9th, 1933, and she would not change the flag in her courtroom. So here we finally, normally they will never admit this, but we actually had a judge on a transcript admit that she was under the War Powers Act, which is the one I keep talking about, March 9th, 1933, where that was instituted at that time, and that things are different. And then in their district, state, county courts today, they cannot recognize the Constitution, nor will they, nor normally will they even let you speak of it. All right? Military government is that which is established by a commander over an occupied enemy territory. The people are generally left unmolested in ordinary domestic and business relationships, which we are. If you notice that they kind of leave us alone to do what we want, but there's all of these new rules that are instituted, like the income tax, all of these codes and statutes. You have to have a permit to build a house. You have to have a permit to do this. You need to have a license to do this type of work. So all of that stuff came in after 1933, all under the military government. Okay, it's a way of controlling you and controlling the money at the same time. Under the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, and the law of necessity, one of the absolute international rights of the states is self-preservation. And I think everyone can understand the law of necessity, which has been for thousands of years, is like the law of self-defense. That normally, you know, in our system, that you can't kill someone that's illegal and even unlawful. But if circumstances exist where you were defending your family or yourself, then it is legal and lawful to kill someone. Okay, so that law of necessity has been used by many countries over the centuries to institute these national emergencies. Okay, and for lack of a better word, suspend the Constitution that is presently there. It's always done under a national emergency. Okay, under this law of necessity, which is, 5,000 years old. One of these powers is to institute military government. Under the American Constitution, Admiral Maritime is a civil jurisdiction that can be regulated under a military venue. Admiralty courts are merely civil in nature, not criminal, and portions of the Bill of Rights do not apply in Admiralty courts. And again, I think probably there's enough people on this call to obviously attest to that fact that they try to go in there and either assert or get the judge to recognize any of their constitutional rights, and you absolutely get none. I think of it more, I've been in the military. Anybody out there that's been in the military would understand this a lot better, that when you voluntarily contract to be on active duty, you volunteer to be in another jurisdiction. It's called Uniform Code of Military Jurisdiction, UCMJ. And you learn very quickly in that system that you're guilty till proven innocent, and that they can charge you, they can punish you with no defense, no rights, no nothing. And that's really what's going on in today's court. Is there's this presumption that anyone is an enemy of the state, a rebel belligerent, and you're guilty, and that somehow you have to prove yourself innocent, which means your chances realistically of beating them are probably in the 1% range. And you got to be smart enough just to even win that. And I think it's more of a fact that they let people win occasionally, because if no one ever won, people would figure out real quick that the whole system is completely different and rigged. But my point is that really that there's a different jurisdiction, a different set of laws that are going on in a courtroom, let alone out in your everyday lives. Okay. Secondarily, occupants are treated as rebels, belligerents, and enemies of the state. The commander has the right to seize property. Every state of Texas, state of Florida, state of Illinois is de facto conquered military territory. Again, this is what happened with Proclamation 2039 and 2040 on March 9th, 1933. So under the Constitution, there are three kinds of military jurisdiction. Number one exercised in peace. Well, that's not what's happening really. 2, one in foreign power in the time of rebellion. 3, one in a time of invasion or national emergency. Now, if you go back to March 4th, 1933, when FDR was inaugurated, and again, usually I play this, and there are some podcasts out there where I'm going to go over this kind of thing, where he specifically asked, because of the national emergency, he wanted special powers, executive 2 powers, as if he was at war. And this is where, again, the martial law comes into play. All right. This is one of his quotes. I want Congress to give me broad executive power as if we were at war. Now, that's the Trading with the Enemy Act, again, of March 9th, 1933. So a victorious army seizes all public money. Wow. So this is really, I hope that I can get you to understand what's going on with your car and your houses and property taxes and just about anything else. Now, they called the emergency, the stock market crash in 29, and then they come around to 33. And basically, they didn't have enough gold to redeem the dollar bills, the $20 bills at that point, because at that point, gold was worth $20 an ounce, and you could take a $20 bill into a bank, and by law, they had to redeem it and give you an ounce of gold. Well, everyone knows that the Federal Reserve Act started in 1913, and in case you haven't read the act, but I have, they charge 6% interest on using Federal Reserve notes. Okay? And at that time, they had to have a 40% collateral backing of gold. So they had to have 40% of what they were printing in the bank as gold, as collateral, in order to legally print that money. So in the act, they charged 6%, and instead of getting paid in Federal Reserve notes, they wrote into the act that they get paid in gold certificates, which was like a piece of paper saying that they had a claim on as much gold. So they didn't even want their own money that they were creating, because they knew that over time that it gets devalued and that sooner or later it is worth nothing. Like you guys will totally understand today that a dollar bill when you were a kid does not buy the same stuff that does today. So you get to 33, there's a shortage of the gold. They call it, FDR gets on whatever on the radio, says everybody's hoarding gold, thus they need to seize the gold, right? But what did they do after they seized it? They turned around and almost doubled the price from $20 to $35. It was really about getting more gold as collateral in order to pay the debt of the federal government. So this is really why all of that happened. All right. Now, here's the real issue. When they did that, all publicly registered property was placed in trust. So all land at the time that people had a loyal title to was registered with the government. And when I say the word registered, you got to think it was placed in trust, which meant the farmers now got, or people got equitable title to the land, which is use and possession. This is trust law again. The government maintained legal title to the property because, again, commander in chief has the right to seize that property if needed at wartime. So even, if there really was a World War III today, they could come in and take your house. They could come in and take your land. If you had a farm, they could take control of the crops, all under the law of necessity, as if we were at war. So this is how they did it. They publicly registered all the property, okay, which included all the birth certificates. So it could be used as collateral to print more Federal Reserve notes, or what I call monopoly money, phony money. So since 33, the land that you bought, or the house on the land that you bought, has been in a trust. Okay, so which meant you get possession of the house, you get full use of the house, you can paint the house, you can put a new roof on, you can put new air conditioner in, but because the government has the claim of legal title on that house, they are allowed to charge property taxes. And guess what happens if you don't pay property taxes? They have the legal right to come in, and they don't take the house, they repossess the house. Think of the wording again. On a foreclosure, they're suing for repossession, which means they're trying to get your possession, your equitable title. They already have the legal title, okay? So this is why, and again, there's been so many people that have had their houses paid off, they stop paying property tax because they don't think they have to, and I'm telling you, you do, okay? So don't stop paying property taxes until you have a loyal title. But obviously when they have it, they have a right under the current legal military government to charge you property taxes. And it's no different from a car. Okay, when you purchase a car, because there's no more gold backing of the money, because you're using monopoly money, there's no legal title to the asset that you're purchasing. All right, you only get equitable title to the car, which means you get use and possession of the car, but it's registered with the state. The state, because they have legal title, can tell you got to have it registered, got to have insurance, right? And you got to have plates on it. And so what happens if you don't do that? They come take your car. It even happened to David Strait. They took his truck, a year and a half ago or so. I think it was last spring. Took his car, they arrested him. And it wasn't that they were doing anything illegal. Okay, they have legal, it's the state's car. It wasn't his truck. Now you're going to say, oh, but I purchased it. I bought it. It's my personal property. No, it's not, because you bought it with monopoly money. Federal Reserve notes are debt notes. They're IOUs. You never paid for the truck or the house with money, lawful species of money. What you're using, what debt notes, what Federal Reserve notes are currency. Big difference between currency and money. If you buy it with money, which they won't allow you to do, you could obtain the legal title to your assets and you wouldn't have to pay property taxes or get your car registered. But that's not the way it is. in today's world. So I'm telling you, get the car registered, get the plates, and get it insured. Otherwise, and I'm sure you've seen 100 videos on thing where they get stopped, they put their own plate on, they're just cracking down even harder. It's not your car. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that. It's not yours. You purchased it with monopoly money. You don't deserve the legal title. It's not your property. It's not your house. You used monopoly money. You used an IOU. All you did was give them an IOU that somebody else would pay them. And again, all of this comes under trust law. Okay, this is what you've got to understand what's going on and why it isn't that they're breaking law. It isn't that they've conspired nationwide to take stuff from you. They have every legal right to do it and every right under the Constitution. It's just you don't understand what's going on. Okay, there's a way to do things correctly and there's a way to do them incorrectly. And if you do them incorrectly, there's going to be bad things that happen to you. And I'm sure people either know friends or have had stuff happen to them if they try these kind of things. Okay? I'm not taking the side of the government. I'm trying to tell you how things operate. I'm trying to explain the rules of the game. If you want to win the game, you better first learn the rules for the game if you want to beat them. It's very possible to beat them, but you got to know the rules for the game. All right? So they basically seized the real money. They give us their military script. Okay, which means we have to use their money to pay public debts. But the whole reason is because they're maintaining legal title to the assets when things are purchased so they can control everything. Now, if you want to know on a deeper level why, again, this is all done, is because they have the piece of paper that they own the car. They put those together in a batch of 10,000. So the state of Texas takes a batch of 10,000 titles that are worth $30,000 a piece to $3 million. They go to the bank. Okay, the bank holds those as collateral, and then they're allowed to lend out 10 to 30 times as much. So on all of those legal titles that the state of Texas are holding, it allows them to print credit to the state of Texas in order to pay their bills. So this is really how all governments are funded worldwide today, are holding legal titles as collateral and assets to the banking system. Okay, and if you want to fix things, fix the banking system. Get rid of the Federal Reserve. That would fix about 90% of the problems in the world. But it's the system that you have to understand is going on and how the government is being funded, how your legal title to all assets are being held by them, and how really you're really a renter of your house, you're renting your car, and a variety of other stuff. Okay? So, let's give, the occupying force seizes all public property till the occupation is over. So if you read Proclamation 2040, it specifically tells you that this is full force and effect until a president comes along and rescinds it. And only a POTUS, only a president can rescind it. So again, if you are a Trump person, get him to rescind 2040. And guess what? We go back to a republic and we'll go back to gold-backed currency. You'll go back to getting legal title to your house and car. You want to change things? That's how to change things. Okay. But if he's not going to do it, the only option is for you to do it as an individual. Okay. Which is what I help people do on an individual basis, is to clear up that system. Okay. The occupying force sequesters for its own benefit all revenue of real property belonging to the hostile nation. The title to such real property is held in trust during military occupation until the occupation is complete. Again, I just kind of went over that. The commander-in-chief rules the country with supreme power, Article 2. This is why the gold fringe on the flag with an eagle on the top of the flag is in every courtroom. This is why that judge wouldn't remove the flag from the courtroom, is that's where she is getting her powers. It's an Article 1 created courtroom, but is being administered by Article 2. There is no Article 3 in their courtrooms unless you know how to access that. I'm telling you, it's possible to access it, but if you don't know the rules of the game, you're sitting in an Article 1 court run by Article 2, which means they cannot see the Constitution whatsoever. All they can see is the straw man person or the surety for the straw man that's there and is acting as liability for it. Okay. For purposes of Social Security payroll and Medicare taxes, only residents of the state of the District of Columbia are liable. Every citizen of the United States is either an actual resident of District of Columbia or through residing elsewhere, like Texas, fraudulently construed to be a resident of the District of Columbia, which is the territorial sea, military jurisdiction, for legal purposes. Every time you claim to be a citizen of the United States on any government application, you're unwillingly giving them jurisdiction by voluntarily applying for benefits of a trust. Now, Randy will tell you that, I teach you how to sign any and all contracts which don't put you into their jurisdiction. Because according to trust law, they put your name in a trust. That's the straw man trust. And that's really who the liable party is for taxes, who is subject to code, statute, all of those kinds of things. So that's a trust. So in trust law, the person responsible normally for a trust is the trustee. He's the person that runs the trust. Now, you're not the trustee of the strawman trust. You are actually the beneficiary of the trust, but they always ask you to volunteer to be the trustee. They'll always put the piece of paper in front of you and say, will you please sign this? But when you sign that unrestricted, you're stating you're the trustee and you're handling it, which makes you liable. This is why you go to jail. This is why you have to pay the fine. This is why you end up paying income taxes, because you keep volunteering to be the surety. And look that word up. Surety means that you're a volunteer that is volunteering to take on the debt or obligation of another, which is your all caps name. Okay, that's what they put in trust. They can't put you in trust. That's against the 13th Amendment. They would all go to jail for treason tomorrow. Okay, so they developed this highly complex, complicated system where it's all about the name that's held in trust. Okay, but you have to understand what trust law is so you don't know how to sign as the beneficiary and not the trustee, which keeps you out of their jurisdiction. Okay, now let me read to you a Supreme Court case, which is the most cited case in our history. It's been cited probably almost 2,000 times at last count. This is what I consider probably, if not one of the most important Supreme Court rulings ever done. Okay, it was in 1906. It's called Hale versus Henkel. The court rules that there's a distinction between private natural persons and artificial persons. Do you think that's important? Absolutely. Okay. Here's a quote. Here's the quote I want you to hear. The right of the individuals are restricted only to the extent that they have been voluntarily surrendered, which means you give consent by the citizenship to the agencies of government. Let me repeat that. The rights of the individual, we're talking about your Bill of Rights, are restricted only to the extent that they have been voluntarily surrendered by the citizenship of the agencies of government. So what I'm telling you is no one can actually take your rights away from you. It's impossible. But you can waive your rights. You can volunteer and give them away, kind of, that kind of thing. So don't get into this, they're taking them from you. No, you waive them in some way. They tricked you into waiving your rights, okay, which happens in court. Okay, if you go in court, just to touch on that just for a second, if you appear and don't disclaim that you're there on special ministerial visitation, if you appear as the defendant, you just waived your constitutional rights. If you hire an attorney, you've immediately waived your constitutional rights, because now you're saying you're too stupid to represent yourself, and now you need somebody to do it for you, so they're going to treat you as a ward of the state, that kind of thing. So there's many ways where they deceitfully trick you into volunteering. And you say that's bad, but I'm telling you, look at it the other way. Look at the good side, that you have a choice. Okay, that now if you understand this game, that you've got to figure out how not to volunteer. Okay, because it's really you that's creating the mess here. Okay, they're like the devil, put the carrot out in front of you, but you're the dumb one taking it, thinking nothing bad will happen. You've got to figure out what happens and why the system is set up this way, and how can I maybe get something I want, but not waive my rights at the same time I'm doing it. Okay. Let me try to give you another example. I think we got just a bit of time. I'm sure people have heard of Colin Kaepernick, the football player from the 49ers, who, did the kneeling and all that kind of stuff. Well, when you sign an NFL contract, and I've read an NFL contract because I have a nephew that plays professional football. So I've read those contracts, and they're contracts like any other corporate contract, that you are waiving your rights to certain things when you sign these work contracts. For instance, in an NFL contract, there's a thing about, your behavior, and that they can control or they can dictate your behavior in their area of employment, the football field. So they have I'll use the word control. They can tell the football players, you can only act this way on the football field, and if you don't, there can be repercussions, and we can do certain things to you. Now, Colin Kaepernick seems to think that he had First Amendment rights, that he could do anything he wanted on the football field, only after he signed and waived all of those First Amendment rights away. Okay, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. And what happened? They got rid of him. Okay. And they had every right to, okay, because he waived his First Amendment rights when he signed that contract. He didn't stipulate in there that I wasn't going to adhere to those kind of things. Okay, he had a choice. Everybody always has a choice. Okay, they don't make you do anything. You're the one that is making the choices to go to the right or go to the left. Okay, that's what's really going on. Okay, so hopefully that's just a start to get you to understand of why things happen the way they happen. Things happen every day. And again, if anybody's got court cases in here, I think you'd be the first one to admit that they treat you like crap. They treat you as if you're guilty. They will not, under any circumstance, recognize common law. They will not recognize your constitutional rights whatsoever, because they don't exist in that courtroom. And until you learn how to make them, or to switch the mode, the jurisdiction of that court, or go to a different court where your constitutional rights are secured and can be recognized, that you're basically beating your head against the wall. Okay? And I think when I talked to Darren, he said some of the guys on this call might have some issues with the courts at this time. If you want maybe a little advice or help, I'd say email me. Even if you're at the stage of sentencing or whatever, there's always a way, believe it or not, to still get out of it. They give you 3 chances to basically say, I'm not the straw man, I am the real man. They actually give you 3 chances to say no. And most of the time, most people have got 1 or 2 strikes. And if you get 3 strikes, then you're going to jail. Okay. And I don't know the age of most of you guys, but there was a U.S. Supreme Court fella named Bork, who was supposedly one of the smartest judges in the country way back in the 80s. And he was going up to be a Supreme Court. And everyone thought he was a shoo-in. He was going to be the Chief Justice because how intelligent he was. And during the questioning, I believe this still might be on YouTube, during the questioning, I think Senator Kennedy asked him something about jail. And he said, his remark was that everybody in jail volunteered to be in jail. And they were just couldn't believe what he said. And it went on, of course, every night, there was a bit about him saying this, and, everyone interpreted it as he was blaming the criminals and that kind of stuff. But he was actually telling you the truth. Okay? That you actually volunteered to go to jail. You had 3 chances to say no, and you didn't. So these are just examples. These are just examples of, they put stuff in your face all the time. There was a guy named Nelson Rockefeller that was going to be the vice president to Gerald Ford when he got in 1976. Okay, this used to be on the internet. There was a Senate hearing, and they said, Mr. Rockefeller, how much money did you make last year? And he said, well, I think it was around $167 million. And then they said, well, how much taxes did you pay on that? And he said, 0. Next question. and they just went right by him. Nobody said a word. No one understood that all his earnings are in a trust. When they're in a trust, they're not taxable. Okay? So over and over again, I'm just trying to get you to understand trust law, which is really God's law. If you understand what's going on in the world today, it can be used for your benefit or it can be used for your detriment. And until you learn the rules of the game, some bad things can happen to you. And again, my thing and what I help people do is to try to teach them privately is how to stay out of that jurisdiction, how to stay in the private, how to create these trusts so you can accomplish all of the things that you want to accomplish. And I'll kind of leave it at that unless somebody has some questions, or I don't know how you guys run this. I appreciate the time. I hope that was informative to some extent, or whatever you guys think.
Yeah, is this on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you tell them something about the program that you make? I don't want to have you say anything that you don't want to have disclosed on YouTube, because that goes into your private, offering service. But would you describe in general what you do for the package?
Okay, so generally the outline and the most important thing is like this. Let's say, and think about this on a common sense, big picture level. If you want to prove to the government that you're not liable for taxes and that you have constitutional rights, don't you think it would behoove you to provide evidence to show them that instead of just saying it? Okay, so one of the first things we do is we do a declaration of status, but has 13 exhibits of evidence. Okay, so we provide like a Declaration of Independence, just like our founding fathers did. Then we provide, this all in affidavit form, then we provide 10 affidavits into why, we have these rights. Then we provide exhibits like the double authenticated certificate of live birth. Okay, you don't understand that they gave you the evidence you've needed all your life to prove who you really are in your proper citizenship status, your proper political citizenship status. Okay. There's a Supreme Court case, there's a 2008 Ortiz case that the U.S. Supreme Court is telling you that the difference between a Union States citizen and a U.S. citizen is political status. So again, I can name you 10 different cases and how they're telling you what's going on. And I know nobody reads U.S. Supreme Court cases but me, but boy, I'm telling you, they'll give you the answers if you just read the cases. So we gather evidence, get that evidence together, get it recorded, put it on the public record, and then what will we do? Well, don't you think that, they operate under the presumption of law, which means it really isn't true. They're just presuming that you've done all of these things. So after you get your political status changed legally in their system, which then allows you to claim exemption from income taxes. That's just one of the benefits. But then you have to notify them. You have to, we call it, equity is giving notice. Okay, Mr. IRS, Mr. State Department, Treasury Department, we need to send you a copy of what we've done. In other words, we come walking through the front door. None of this is behind, trying to sneak it in, come in through the back door. Don't tell them. That's one of the worst things you could do is don't tell them what's going on. You need to tell them what's going on, because legally in their system, when you give them an opportunity to respond to what you're doing, and if they don't respond, well, then they legally accept, because that's the very same policy and procedure they use on us, that if we don't respond to them, they assume it's correct. So you have to understand that you have to tell them what you're doing. You have to give them the legal opportunity to say, no, this is wrong. We can't, we're not going to accept this, whatever. Now, it's considered right here's the big if your affidavits are done correctly, which I can tell you, if you've done David Strait and Anna stuff, those affidavits are not done correctly. That's why they don't accept them. You won't get something that says they're not going to accept it, but I'm telling you, there are flaws all over that paperwork and that they're not correct. So you have to be absolute 100% correct in your paperwork to get this stuff done. we create a trust, or I create it for you, okay, to use just like your straw man was being used to go into that jurisdiction. When you create an entity, all right, so the analogy is this, the game of Monopoly. All right, so when you normally play a game of Monopoly, you have to use their game piece. Now, you cannot play the game standing right at the table, but not use their game piece because they can't see you, right? So you, under their rules, normally you would use their game piece. When it lands on Park Place, you have to pay the rent. Now, the rules say, well, because they create an entity, the rules don't say you can't. So we create our own entity to play the game of Monopoly, but only that game piece is in a different jurisdiction than theirs. So when our game piece lands on Park Place or Boardwalk with a hotel on it, you're not liable. You're not susceptible to those codes and statutes. So again, this gets into the trust law, knowing that different trusts have different jurisdictions. Who creates those jurisdictions? Who has the control to control what law form you're using inside of that trust? These are all things you got to learn. So I'm sure most people have played the game Monopoly and understand that. So we play the game from a distance. We're just using an entity, a private trust, to do everything we need to have a bank account, to have car insurance, to buy a car, buy a house, do all of the stuff that is in their jurisdiction. But because we created that private trust, we now have said that federal government, state governments, if there's ever a question, you actually have to come into our jurisdiction, which is the Constitution and equity. You have to come into our jurisdiction for any controversies. So I don't know if you want to call it flip the script, but you're changing the jurisdiction and how things are operated. And that's the biggest factor, is you're going to make them come into your jurisdiction instead of right now, you're always having to go into their jurisdiction. Okay. And then once you get all that stuff done, you put your things in a trust. Again, let's just take an example. Once you create the private trust, you're going to put all your weapons in that private trust. ATF comes knocking at your door one day, says, hey, we know that all of these or weapons have been registered. We want to look at them and make sure they're okay. And now you can say, I'm sorry, they don't belong to me. They belong to a private trust. And then they have to turn around and walk away because they know that any assets in a private trust they don't have jurisdiction over. But if you don't have that trust, they're going to assume that it's in your straw man's name, and that's what gives them the right to come take your weapons or to inspect them or do whatever they want. It's all a jurisdictional issue every time. Okay, and if you want out of their jurisdiction, you got to create your own jurisdiction and put your assets into that other jurisdiction. Does that help, Randy?
Randy, you can't hear you on YouTube, you gotta go up there to the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty good overview. I've got to turn on the microphone for these folks at the same time. Anyway, that's pretty good overview. We're going to turn it over and let people ask some questions for a few minutes. And I'll explain more after this, so we're not taking up so much of your time because I've learned so much from you. I'm still learning, still learning how to sign everything because almost every document is signed differently. But anyway, so I'm going to hand it over to someone who wants to ask you a question now.
So the other day, our President Trump signed an executive order making the constitutional law the supreme law. I wonder how long would that take to trickle down into the judicial system?
It's the Supreme Court law now. Okay. Now, you don't understand that when you go to the Supreme Court, there's two different jurisdictions that the people, the plaintiffs, the parties are pleading. Okay. They're either pleading in the territorial military jurisdiction, or you have to plead that you want original jurisdiction, which is equity. Okay. And if the plaintiff or didn't ask for it, what do you think the default level of jurisdiction is? It's the territorial military. Okay. So you have to understand and know what you're doing. If you want original jurisdiction, you're the plaintiff, God damn it, you have to ask for it. It has to be on your pleading. That's Bates. Okay. Bates wrote a whole book on this. That the jurisdiction has to be on the face sheet of the pleading. And if it's not, you have waived it. You cannot ask for it later. Okay, so again, you got to know the rules to the game. All right, I'm telling you, you can go to the Supreme Court and get original jurisdiction if you know what you're doing. I know somebody that's done it. Okay, it can be done today. It doesn't have. We didn't have to wait for Trump to do it. It was done 5 years ago. Okay, I did a case. I sued the government in 1994. I got original land jurisdiction. I got equity. That was 30 years ago. Okay, I'm telling you, it's always been there. You just got to understand how to get there, how to ask for it, how to access the proper jurisdiction. Because there's two things going on at the same time, just like Matrix. Okay, and again, I do a whole podcast on jurisdiction, that you have these simultaneously democracy and republic that's going on right in front of you. The default level is the democracy, the military jurisdiction. It's already here. It never went anywhere. It's just hidden from you. Okay, and you don't know how to access it. This is what I'm trying to teach Randy and everybody else, is how to access that part of a different jurisdiction. Okay.
I have a question.
Now again, no, I'm sorry. Let me add one more thing. If Trump wanted to fix things overnight, all he's got to do is rescind 2040, and it would happen.
Kale,
Yes.
I have a question, Kale.
Microphone's on there.
Oh,
Jason.
I have a question, Kale. You mentioned Phelps. Are y'all using his declaration of status?
Most of the time, but see, people are different. I'll give you an example. I've got, somebody's got maybe a wife that was naturalized. Okay, they come in under the 14th Section 1. They can't come in under Union State. I've got people that are born of a service member on a military base in Germany or Japan. They get a certificate of birth abroad. That comes in through the 14th Amendment. So you have to know how to construct the declaration according to what your circumstance is. Okay, so again, most people, if you're born in one of the 50 Union States, you were born on the land jurisdiction. That's why we get the double authenticated certificate of live birth as evidence of that. But we have other people that come in a different way. Many people have come in here from different countries. They went through the 5-7 year process of being naturalized. That is available to them. It's just got to be written differently than if you were here, because again, DC is not one of the Union States. And if DC was never one of the Union States, that means there had to be a different jurisdiction for them versus the jurisdiction for the 50 Union States. This is again why I'm telling you from the very beginning, there were two different jurisdictions going on. This is not something they really just created. It's always been there, always has been, always will be.
I've read some of Eric Phelps' writing.
Yes.
And that stuff's really good.
Yeah, that's very similar to mine. I learned underneath him also.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next time, just ask him.
So Kale.
Yes.
So who has the occupancy of the United States? If we're under military control, who is that entity? What is that entity?
You mean the entity that is the United States, or who is running the United States of America? See, the Constitution is a trust. Okay, the 13 original states were the creator grantors. They hired a company at that time called the United States to run the United States of America. Okay, a company was the first one.
It was chartered in the city of London, right?
Right, which actually was a subcorporation of the Company of Virginia, which really, again, was a corporation of the Crown. Okay, so what you have, and throughout the years, those corporations or companies have gone bankrupt. Okay, when they go bankrupt, another corporation comes in to be the trustee, the federal government, who's running the show. Okay, so it's gone from a company called the United States to a corporation in 1873. That was what the Vatican started in Delaware, the United States of America Incorporated. Then they went bankrupt in 33. Then it was called the all caps United States. They went bankrupt in 45. And now the present corporation that's running the United States of America is a corporation called the United Nations, which is a subcorporation of the IMF. Okay, so it's that kind of thing. The corporations are running the United States of America country. Okay, but as the states, as creator grantors, we have the power to fire them. Okay, we have that power. Okay, we can replace them for breach of trust. Or do you think they're doing whatever in our benefit? Absolutely not. Wouldn't you agree that we should be able to fire them? And that's the system that we were under. Now that trust.
That's right. We're the sovereigns.
Right.
We the people.
Right. We gave the power to our representatives to the states to hire a company to run the 19 enumerated powers. Okay. Again, that's a trust agreement. Okay. And the fact that I can prove that that's a trust again is to tell you that when the president is elected, it's not a popular vote. It's a state vote. It's a state election. Okay. Well, why is it a state election? Because the states were the original creator grantors of the 1789 Constitutional Trust. They're the ones in control. And they said we're going to do it by electoral college, not by the popular vote. And that, of course, that's the way it is today. All of these things usually can make perfect logical sense when you look at it from a trust structure kind of scenario. We have the power. We just got to fire them. We got to charge them. The easiest way to get rid of a government official is to charge them with breach of trust, because that can mean they can be gone. They can be unbonded. You can get a cop gone, a mayor, a representative. You charge them with breach of trust at federal district court level, they can be gone, poof, immediately. That's where the power is. Okay, it's in using trust law to enforce trust law. You can't go in there as a man. You got to say, I, John Doe, the beneficiary of the 1789 Constitutional Trust, hereby is charging so-and-so with breach of trust. That's when it'll stick. That's when it will work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
Hey,
I'm sorry. When you do your debt validations, someday try sending the CFO or COO or CEO that he's in breach of trust and see what happens.
That's a good point,
Be
Cale.
done today.
Because then he'll go, oh, Jesus Christ, I could lose my $1 million job. I better get rid of this one as fast as I can. Because they know that's the one thing where they can be replaced and be removed immediately.
That's good news.
Good point.
Good info.
Good point.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get you two together for quite a while, as we've both, we've talked about that. So, but anyway, we got a couple of other guys here that got some questions, and then Darren's telling me that we only got a few minutes.
All right.
Until we get.
Next guest is there, so.
Well, yeah, Ron, as long as you're okay with it cutting into your time. So we only got to learn a limited amount of time here at this restaurant. So
I got a question for you. I'm being drugged
Order
through
another
this.
dessert.
Yeah.
So I'm being drugged through the state court. How do I access this common law jurisdiction?
It depends if you've hired an attorney, depends on where you're at in the thing. Contact me by email. I'll give you my 2 emails. One of them is mrbeneficiary@gmail.com, and the other one is klfreedom748@gmail. Court cases, I have to know what's going on exactly where you're at in the system to know how to best help you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
and again, I'll fill these guys in, after we're done with this, in the basics. So
I got
more question.
I got 2 questions. One, you mentioned they give you 3 chances to get out. Can you
Yes.
explain exactly what those steps are, what points that we have access to those? And the other question is, you mentioned the 14th Amendment. Isn't that the one that's never been ratified by Congress?
That's not what the Supreme Court says. The Supreme Court acts as if it has. So you can provide that evidence all day long, but I'm telling the Supreme Court rules every day as if it was ratified.
Okay, the most important, I'm in a court case myself, and I'd like to find out what those 3 chances are for me to get out of their jurisdiction.
Here you go. Write it down. First strike is if you appear. And that whether you appear as the name, if they say, are you Mr. Johnson? And you say yes, that's strike 1. If you appear.
Okay, let me interject. Last time I was in court, when you called my name, I said, I'm the living man. I am not the fictitious corporation before you. That was my response.
That doesn't work. You want to know why it doesn't work? Because they know you're a man. Okay, they're looking for the surety to the straw man. They're not looking for the straw man. They want the surety. They want the guy that's coming to be liable for him. They already know you're a man. There's no game going on as much as you think it is. Okay. So if you answer their questions, strike one. Okay. Strike two. If you plead. Did you plead?
No, I have not.
Well, good. Then you don't have strike two.
I
Strike
plead,
three.
when they ask me to plead, I'm going to plead that I'm redeemed, that all my transgressions are forgiven and paid for by the blood of the Lamb on the cross of Calvary, against which there's no higher authority. That would be my plea.
All right. So far, then they probably don't have in personam jurisdiction. All right. Now they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to admit to that. They're going to act like they do. They're going to proceed as if they did. The third strike comes at the sentencing. Let's say they convict you, and again, you don't say that you object or you do not consent. And then the famous words are, do you have anything to say before I sentence you? That's the third, I would say, attempt or the possibility to say something. So I have statements of elocution that you can use that could normally even wipe away even after you've been convicted. Because if you say nothing at the sentencing, now you have waived your three chances.
Yeah, well, yes. So if I just don't enter any plea, then at what point, what do I do then?
Normally, they're going to try to play it out, and at the last second, they're going to come to you and ask to you to plead because they know they can't convict you if you haven't pled. And you'll get the judge to say, well, I'm going to plead for you then. Well, they can't do that. They can say they're going to, but I'm telling you, they can't convict you if the judge pleads for you.
I was in a municipal court, and I didn't enter a plea, and the judge says I'm entering a plea of not guilty, and then he passed me over to the prosecutor.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection. You're practicing law from the bench.
That's
You're
right.
not my attorney, and I don't accept your plea. I do not consent. I do not consent.
I do not consent. I do not consent 3 times.
That was a couple months ago. Can I retract that retroactively?
Write up an affidavit that on this court date, he said this, therefore I'm saying now for the record, because all affidavits are entered into the record. Okay. Put it on an affidavit, get it filed in the case.
All right, appreciate it.
Never, ever, I'm Winston Churchill here, never consent.
Correct. That's that's where you have the right to say, I don't consent.
When you go to court, they're always making you an offer. And when you're silent, you're acquiescing and you're accepting their offer through your silence, tacit approval. So you always object and you always do not consent.
Right. If the prosecutor says something, I object, that's hearsay.
I've been sued 7 times since 2017, and I won every case.
You can
Judgment for the defendant.
Yeah, write up an affidavit of an amicus brief, which is friend of the court. Then you can just keep saying, I'm sorry, Your Honor, is that a rebuttal of my affidavit? Okay. Don't answer any questions other than, I'm sorry, is that a rebuttal of my affidavit?
I want to give an example here for everybody listening. Back in September of last year, I got pulled over, and I haven't had a driver's license since 2008, and haven't had any problem other than getting a ticket, and then it just goes away. Anyway, so I was coming into town, and I let off the gas just like everybody else, and a cop ends up pulling me over, and he comes up to my window, and I've rolled it down. And as he's walking up, he says, I need to see your driver's license and registration. And I said, driver's license? He says, yes, I need to see your driver's license and registration. I said, oh, I don't have one of those. And he says, what? And anyway, it just got funnier from there. And his sergeant was called out, and we went through this, and I explained the things to him, and they thanked me. The sergeant thanked me like 3 times for being so polite, explaining things. I said, yeah, and he says he's seen this stuff on YouTube and they're kind of belligerent. I said, yeah, that's not the right way to go about it. They don't train you guys in the Constitution. They don't let us know. We have to learn on our own. And I'm happy to teach you guys. So then, anyway, I said, look, you can write me a ticket. That's fine. I'll just go talk to the judge, which I've known her all my life. I'll just, tell her the laws, show her the laws, and it'll be fine. And so when I did go to court, and I did not sign the ticket, they said they could take me to jail for that. I said, oh, no, that would be a felony. So anyway, I didn't have to sign anything. And I went to court anyway, just to see if they put me on the docket. And they did. And they create bonds. That's how they're making their money. They're creating bonds, and they're going after your SSUAK. So if you don't show up or they find you guilty, whatever, they collect on the bond, right? Whether you pay or not. So that's how they're running their business, which justice is not supposed to be a business. That's how you know it's a corporation. So anyway, I go to court and it's not my friend. She's out of town. So it's a judge filling in for her. And he's not even there. He's on a friggin' TV screen. And I'm like, how can you have a court without the judge being actually in the court? Okay, but anyway, so I said, I just showed up a special appearance because I wanted to see if I was on the docket, and I am, and I shouldn't be because this court doesn't have jurisdiction. And he got very belligerent, and he threatened to throw me in jail 3 or 4 times if I did not enter a plea. And I said, you cannot compel me or coerce me into entering into a contract. At that point, he's saving face. He's acting still belligerent. And so he says, well, I'll just let the prosecutor deal with this. If you'll wait outside, then I'll have the clerk give you his contact info. Okay. At that point, I knew I won. So I go out in the hall and I wait. She calls me up. She says, well, the prosecutor won't be around for about a month. Might be longer than that, but he'll get a hold of you. I said, okay. I walked out of there knowing that was the end of it. To make sure, the next day I filed a open records request asking for his bonds and all kinds of stuff, and stuff that I've learned from Ron Adams here. A list that he's provided that's helped out, and so I asked for that, and guess what? They've never responded to it. I filed a complaint with the AG. He's never responded to it. So, but anyway, it's gone. I've never heard from them again. So that's my example of this, what we're talking about.
Let me make one comment about court. If they ever threaten you with contempt, they always threaten you first. They don't fine you. That's your opportunity. You immediately say, forgive me, Your Honor, I didn't mean to be contemptuous. That immediately clears the slate, which means they have to warn you again. Then you say it again. If they warn you again, you say it again. You'll never go to jail for contempt if you first say, forgive me, I didn't mean to be contemptuous. You have to clear the slate. You have to say something when you're supposed to say something. Okay? And let me say one other thing. 12 presumptions of Roman civil about how court is being going on. There's 12 presumptions. I'm going to read you 2 of them. Number 8, the presumption court of trustee. Presume you accept the office of trustee and government employee just by attending a Roman court. The presumption stands and it is assumed as one of the most significant reasons to claim jurisdiction simply because you appeared. Now, what they tell you also in this is unless you immediately rebut by saying I'm here on special appearance, ministerial appearance. So again, they give you the opportunity. Number 9, presumption of the government acting as a beneficiary. The judge acts in the capacity actually as administrator of the Cesta K Trust. He's looking for the trustee. He's looking for the beneficiary. Why? Because the trustee has to pay the beneficiary. That's how trusts work. So his job is to find out who's who. That's why he always says, are you Mr. Anderson? And if you say yes, what you're saying is I'm the trustee of the Mr. Anderson Trust. So what you've done by saying the word yes is you said, I'm guilty, the trust is guilty, and I'm going to pay. And the game is over with one word. Okay? So you have to claim the beneficiary position, which only leaves the prosecutor as the possible trustee, which means that's the guy that's got to pay. And all lawyers, in case you've never heard, have to bring their checkbook to court, just in case they do have to pay. Okay? The prosecutor acts in the capacity of the beneficiary of the trust. You act as the trustee because you appeared. The presumption stands and you are default the trustee unless you rebut the presumption. Okay? So they have court rules all under trust law. Again, I'm just trying to tell you, trust law is what's going on in the courtroom. Trust law is what's going on the roads. Trust law is what's going on with your driver's license, with your passport. It's all about trust law. Okay? All right, I'm done.
Okay, so we'll end it there. And like I said, I'll answer any questions these guys have after we're done on this, but I want to turn it over to Ron and let him do his part. And I'd love for you to stay in there, KL, and, because I think you need to know more about Ron.
By the way, KL.
Oh, I thought KL's presentation was excellent, a little little
Oh,
motivation
he's the
here for
master.
KO. Hell of a job.
He's the master.
But like I was telling Randy a couple years ago that, you know, I was sued for credit default on credit cards, you know, 7 different times since 2017. And when I went into court, it was a big education process for me because I knew nothing about it. And after the second or third case, I figured out how to win the cases. The first thing I did, along with the trust matters, was to submit a declaration of expression of the trust where I told the court that I was the beneficiary and not the trustee and not the surety. And I filed a Form 56 appointing the clerk of the court as the fiduciary of the trust. So that leveled the playing field.
You rebutted their presumption.
Exactly. Before I even
and you grab the beneficiary position, which means you can't be the liable person.
Yeah,
because
and
they didn't
that's how I
object.
won every case.
They didn't object to the fact
was
that you were
7
the
of them.
beneficiary.
There was 7 of them. So, you know, the declaration of expression of the trust is the way to go.
Yes,
And
because if
with
they
the
see
Form
the
56
trust, if they see the trust, then the laws of equity apply, not statutory. Okay. Now they can see you as a constitutionally protected man. You see,
Right.
you get your rights.
Yeah. So, you know,
exoneration.
$125,000 worth of credit card debt went poof.
Poof.
That was my court experience, and the other way to deal with the court, when they call your name, you can collapse the sedi KV or the constructive trust by expressing in words that you're not the surety, you're not the trustee, you're the live flesh and blood sentient creative man. You're not the all cap corporate fiction inscribed on the complaint, that you're the executor of your estate and the beneficiary of the trust. I do not consent to contract nor joinder, and I waive all benefits of your offer. That'll end it right then and there.
Right, because when you hold up, if you had the birth certificate in your hand, especially double authenticated, you're the beneficiary. That's the evidence. So, Your Honor, if you think I'm the trustee, then by the laws of suretyship, I'm merging the titles and collapsing the trust, which means the court case goes poof. By combining the titles, there is no more case.
Now, one other individual asked, well, how do you enter into common law in a regular court, you know, which is typically admiralty or maritime? And the way you do that, since 1938, all courts are controlled by merchants or bankers law. And that's the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code. And the one escape hatch that they've put in the UCC for us, we the people, is UCC Article 1, Section 308, without prejudice. By exclaiming your reservation of your rights under that UCC law, you're putting yourself in common law and you're standing on the land. And all courts have 2 jurisdictions, one for criminal and one for civil. So you would immediately ask the court, is this a criminal matter, or is it, you know, first of all, are we on the record? The judge will say, yeah, or magistrate will say, yeah, we're on the record. And then you'll ask, is this a criminal matter or a civil matter? Now, if he says, well, it's a civil matter, that means there's a contract that has been breached. So once you've reserved your rights under UCC Article 1, Section 308 without prejudice, you immediately ask to see the international contract that you're obligated to perform under. The courts cannot do it because the international contract that you're obligated to perform under is the national debt. All the courts are owned by the British Royal Crown Bank Corporation. And their only purpose is to extract wealth out of the American people, the taxpayer, and satisfy the national debt. So once you ask for that international contract you're obligated to perform under, they'll usually shut down the case right then and there because they can't admit.
Can't bring it forward. There's no contract they can bring forward.
Right. So if there's no contract, there's no case. Now, if it's
No contract, there's no compel for me to perform. That's the point, right?
yeah, exactly. And now if the judge says, or the magistrate says, well, it's a criminal matter, it's a speeding ticket. Well, that's simple. Then you ask for them to point out the aggrieved or damaged party in the courtroom, because there has to be an aggrieved or damaged party that's either sustained bodily injury or had property damage. And if they can't point that individual out, what's that?
That's called corpus delicti.
Yeah, corpus. So if they can't identify the injured party, there's no crime. There's no crime. So just like the civil matter, there's no contract, there's no case.
Well, again, you're rebutting their presumptions.
Yeah.
But you have to verbally state it. That's the point.
It has to come out of your mouth and get on the record.
That's right.
Let me point out another thing, though, and we know that these judges don't ever listen to us, but I was fighting a traffic ticket in this area where we are now. It's like 30 miles away. But anyway, several years ago, and I was questioning the cop, and he failed all over the place. And I asked him if he could prove corpus delicti. And the prosecutor came out of her seat, and so did the judge. And he says, we are not entertaining corpus delicti here. I said, well, if you're not going to entertain it, then you have no jurisdiction by your own admission. Well, they found me guilty anyway because they're a kangaroo court. But I've never paid on it, and they haven't ever collected either. But go ahead, Ron. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and so that was pretty much my court experience. The other issue that I was successful on was discharging debt. I had a daughter who was going through bachelor's, university at the University of Vermont. Got her through the first 2 years of her college education, and then I ran out of money because son number one went through and took all my money. So I wanted to get the daughter through. So they had a agency there that would lend money, for the college education, and I signed a promissory note.
Yep.
It was north of $100,000 to get her through the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And after I was paying about 5 or 6 years on that, $1,000 a month, I realized, I'm not going to have any retirement here unless I do something about this. So what I did was I wrote a certified promissory note in the amount of the outstanding balance, and I submitted it with 21 Susan B. Anthony dollar coins, which is constitutional money. Some people will use $21 U.S. Postal Service money order, but it's constitutional money. And I tendered it to the agency, and they accepted it. They never returned it. They had 72 hours to return the instrument, outlining the defects of the instrument and why they're returning it. They didn't do that, so they accepted it. They agreed to it. Silence is tacit approval. And eventually, the paperwork got sent to the Department of Education, and they came after me for the amount of money. It was about $75,000 at the time. And I went through the rigmarole with them, and eventually they said, okay, the debt's discharged, fell off my credit report, and it's gone.
Mm-hmm. A tender is discharged.
UCC 3-603. So that would be UCC Article 3, Section 603, tender of payment.
Refusal is discharge.
And that's right. And as KL said, paragraph B, refusal is discharge.
I know it by heart.
Paragraph B, right, KL?
That's right. You are absolutely right. Especially if they don't give it back. That means
so not only,
they put it on Wall Street and they made money. So everybody's happy.
Yeah, there's no damaged party. Who's the aggrieved party here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that's pretty much my story. And I work with folks to get them out of credit card debt. And
sounds like you know what you're doing.
It's my firsthand experience, firsthand knowledge.
Ron, can you tell the group about what you offer? Because and give them your background about being a forensic CPA and who you've worked for and all that.
Yeah, I'm a certified public accountant and I'm certified in financial forensics and I do fraud investigations. And I also prepare forensic property and mortgage loan audit reports in foreclosure litigation. And I'm brought in as an expert to testify and explain that the plaintiff on the complaint is fake, number one. It's typically a shill entity. The real party that's bringing the suit is probably Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or maybe Ginnie Mae.
Mhm.
There's a way to prove that. So when they come into court and they're saying we represent XYZ Trust and they're the trustee, we shoot that right out of the water right away. And so they're coming in with a complaint with a fake, false plaintiff.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is the lawyer allegedly representing the plaintiff has no contract with them and no authority. And they're not registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is 22 USC Section 611. They have to be registered as a foreign agent, and they're not. So you can challenge their authority to even be in the courtroom. I've said to the judge,
You gotta
Your Honor, who is
request,
the stranger in the courtroom? Remove them.
you gotta request evidence that they can legally act on the creditor's behalf. Show me the contract that allows you to be here, be their agent. Yes.
Show me the retainer contract you have with your client. They can never produce it. They can never produce it.
Another
See,
couple
that's
of
one of
points.
the presumptions. One of the presumptions KL said you have to blow out of the water.
You always have to rebut their presumptions because that's the opportunity every day is to keep rebutting what they're even standing there for.
Let me kind of add to that. There's my brother-in-law is actually going through Ron's process too. He's already gone through KL's process. Packet
Recording
of it
in
yesterday,
progress.
which I have just breezed through real quick, but there's all kinds of stuff in there that expose the fraud by the mortgage entity. And the first point, which I've been saying for a long time, is when your mortgage is sold to one of these investor entities or servicers, they have dissolved the promissory note. And by dissolving that promissory note, it is now, there's no chain of title between that and the deed of trust. What they're doing is they are actually using that to securitize your mortgage. And basically it's like the best example I've heard or reference is you take a carrot and you turn it into juice. You can never turn it back into the carrot again. So that promissory note is gone. When they bought that note, your note was paid off, and you can say simply, "Thank you very much. I appreciate that." And then give them notice that their contract is now terminated and your mortgage is wiped out. Somebody came and paid it, but then they are selling it repeatedly. And the example I use on this is as a graphics designer and special effects tech and movies and all that, I know a lot about copyright law. And so when you have a photograph, say you've taken this beautiful picture and you get an agent and you want them to distribute it and make you money. Okay, so agent agrees to do that. They go out and license it to several magazines and you start getting paychecks. What you didn't know is that they went across the pond or to England or something and put it in magazines over there, and they thought, you'll never know about it, so they pocket all the money. This is the same thing that's happening with the securitization. They're making a ton of money on it and not telling you about it, and they never got your permission to use your promissory note and your property as the equity or the instrument to do that. So I just wanted to point that out. Do you guys agree with me?
Well, yeah, you're the beneficiary of the mortgage. You're the beneficiary of the loan. Okay, and Ron would tell you that if they ever really did produce the full accounting, which means the credit and the debt side, it would prove that you don't owe any money, that there's actually money owed to you.
Correct. And that happens with every kind of loan. If the bank is big enough, they securitize them all. And when they securitize it, it's done.
Right, but see, again, you got to know trust law to understand your rights as the beneficiary to come in and ask for exoneration or subrogation of that account, so you can be entitled to the collateral securities or exoneration of the debt. That comes from being the beneficiary in a trust. And again, Ron would tell you, you got to get the judge to see the trust, right, or acknowledge it or see that it's there.
Ron?
Yeah, the true debt in these litigations is the unpaid loan account on the books and records of the true creditor, like a loan receivable,
Yeah.
or an account like that. They can never produce that. That is the debt. That's the debt that if it's not paid, they write it off, take a loss, and get a tax benefit. So there is an aggrieved party there. But the people in the courtroom do not have that loan account on their books and records, so there's no debt. While the mortgage and the deed of trust are evidence of a debt, it's not the debt. The debt is the loan account on the books and records and general ledger of the true creditor. And the true creditor is never in the courtroom, and you have to attack that.
That's correct.
Okay, so Ron, you want to explain to these guys what you do, what your service is, other than just generally, tell them about your website, I guess, so you can, define your 3 levels of what you do.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like I'm a forensic accountant. I testify in court, and I spend half my time in litigation support, working with typically plaintiffs. I've got a website called debtremediationtools.org/register to see the video. It's www.debtremediationtools.org/register or www.debtremediationtools.org/go. And I have 3 levels of service. First level of service is you can download the 4 debt validation letters to produce your administrative process to challenge the debt, and then go for a declaratory judgment once you have all that information in court. And number 2 is you get the same 4 debt validation letters, but then you get my coaching service to help you through that process. And level 3 is where I do it all for you. And I also do forensic mortgage and loan audit reports to submit in court. That's essentially the services I provide. And most of my customers are credit card people that are being sued by debt collectors attempting to collect the debt, people in foreclosure, or maybe marital dissolution, and they need an expert witness to testify on the value of any marital assets, for example, a small business or whatever.
And Ron would tell you that when these debt collectors, third party that have bought the debt from somebody off, that they will walk in and won't notify you, and they try to get summary judgment on you. This is why you got an answer. You have to answer.
Yep.
All you got to do is rebut, but you got to answer. And if you
That's
don't,
right.
they're going to come in and whack you.
Yeah, the lawyers typically like to go to a summary judgment hearing as fast as possible to sort of knock you out of the box. But the way you oppose that motion for summary judgment is to inform the court that there are material facts that continue to be in dispute and need to be litigated. But that has to come back with a formal motion opposing the motion for summary judgment.
Which means you got to answer or countersue.
Yeah.
In the answer, yes.
Yeah. And typically the answer includes there's an unpaid loan account. There's no unpaid loan account on the books and records of the creditor. We've asked for it. They never presented it. The attorney here does not have authority to be here. He has no retainer agreement. He's not registered as a foreign agent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And there's a whole laundry list of bullet points that we put in
the most important
motion for summary judgment.
The most important part I'd like to add to yours, Ron, is that an attorney cannot represent or speak for the witnesses of the complainant. So if you got like Bank of America that you're going up against, you can object to the attorney speaking on their behalf because he's not allowed to.
Yeah, he has no firsthand knowledge of any of the facts. So he can make bold, naked allegations that might be interesting to the court, but they're not sufficient for a motion for summary judgment. And there's a case called Trinzi versus Pagliaro, which outlines why that's the case. It's a Pennsylvania case, I think in 1966. And we always include that in our motion objecting to the motion for
Yes.
summary judgment.
Counsel cannot be counsel and witness at the same time. That's what that said. So whatever he says is not first-hand perspective, not admissible. But you got to object. You got to say something. It's the same thing again. Yes.
And KL, your program, when you've gone through it like I have, you have made it clear that we are only to be either sued or sue in federal Article 3 courts jurisdiction.
That's only where you're going to get your constitutional rights. If you really want to do that, if that's a part of the case that they violated your constitutionally secured rights, then you have to go to an Article 3 federal district circuit court. Yes, but you can fight and defend the case as the grantor beneficiary of the court case, or the credit card case, or the mortgage case, because you can appear because you have a beneficial interest. So you can appear as a third party by not admitting that you're the trustee defendant. So there's still a way. It depends on what you want to accomplish. Again, every case is different.
And that would apply to when you go through your program. What we do, and same thing with Ron, his help is we create a copyright of that all caps name, but KL through your system, it's separating us from that and creating the private trust.
And you claim it as your property. That's just like a copyright. That isn't in a copyright. You're claiming that's your total property. So you have to, first of all, you have to prove why it is your property. Once you claim it, then you convey it into the private trust, and that's how you control it.
Yeah, and part of that is in your process is notifying them that they are terminated as our guardians, and therefore we then claim it back into our private trust. And at that point, they can't do anything.
Well, you have to claim the titles. You have to claim the equitable and legal title to the name.
Right. So the copyright violations after that would be reason to remove it to federal court if you wanted to go that route, right?
I would go to federal court if I'm the plaintiff. If you had to be the defendant, you might have to stay where you're at. So it depends on what, again, you're doing with the case. If you're coming as plaintiff or you're just defending a case.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, Randy.
Yes, sir.
How do I get KL's contact information?
I'll send it to you. And I was going to announce also that I'll let all these guys have your contact information for both of you, so they can contact you directly.
Great.
Yeah, we got another question here.
So under the mortgages and all that, is that where they're tied to a holding company? Because of the security that's bonded. My understanding is bonds are taken to a holding company through 31 CFR 233.17. From my understanding, you could be a if you tie your trust to the 233.17 as a holding company, you can become a government contractor. And you're able to get ask for full disclosure FOIA from the SEC on all bonds created in your all caps name. 31 CFR 233.16, the principal in that is us. So my other question is are they taking property, which is a household good, and making it commercial?
Did you hear all that, Ron?
I'm not familiar with those laws. I'd have to research those statutes. I just don't have a good answer for that because I would need to do some research.
Okay. He said, okay, he walked away from the mic. So, okay, anybody else?
Got one.
Okay, Darren's got one.
We have a lady that got life in prison. I was helping her with. It was over laundering money is what they did the case under. And we're trying to get her back out now. And we were told if we get the birth certificate authenticated. It already is. Okay, it already is. That we can do a notice and notify the court that, you know, for example, I'm her power of attorney, notify that there's been fraud upon the court and get her released. Now, I know a little bit about because I talked to the gentleman that's working on it, but Ned may have more. Could you have more details on that?
Well, yeah, the judge, she didn't want to enter in a plea. The judge said she was going to enter into a plea. And then I think she acquiesced because she was forced into a plea.
She never answered for the plea.
Oh, she never answered a plea. That's correct. And she has the judge and prosecutor got in trouble, so they're retrying the case this Monday, April 22nd. And they tried to give her life for crimes that didn't warrant a life imprisonment. And it showed that the judge and prosecutor were biased and possibly working together in the case.
I think that's
So
more
she-
of a KL question.
Yeah, she actually asked for common law court several times, trial by jury. She called out a star courtroom on the judge, where actually judges came out of the back room, which was an actual star courtroom. And
There was also no true bill on the indictment, and we had 4 different witnesses. Every day we would have multiple affidavits of everything the court did that was wrong. And we, you know, basically cited everything that went wrong throughout the full duration of the trial.
I think that's the breach of the trust topic that KL's talked about.
yeah, they have, she had several properties that they locked up, and there's a lot of discrepancies where, you know, even the prosecutor possibly broke the RICO Act. So they just kept rolling like everything was good.
But the question is, do you have any knowledge of getting which we have, the birth certificate, it's authenticated, and having some type of document that could be drawn up to notify the court that she needs to be removed immediately from prison?
Okay, 1 second. What about putting her in as?
Does she have a spouse?
No,
Okay,
What about
mother?
putting her in property
what's
and
that?
then claiming her as part
Let
of
him answer this first, Joe, I'll do that next.
Okay, go ahead, KL.
Well, an old time way to do that was to do a writ of habeas corpus by the spouse or the mother or father type of thing. Because
That's not
habeas corpus is an Article 3 writ.
I've done about 8 of those, and I don't have any luck with habeas anymore.
So the other question that I don't know is what she was charged with. You understand that if you're charged with harming a person or property, they can pull you into their jurisdiction. That just like the Constitution says so. So
Money laundering.
depends on the
and
charge.
Money laundering across state line, and
All right, so
also,
that's not, there's no
You know-
injured party there.
Also, KL, in Tarrant County, they have a special task force for elder abuse. And that's their main mission, is to try to, you know, protect the elder people in the county.
yeah, they got her.
Well, that might be the tough one. See, again, they're alleging harm to some person. Okay.
300.
Yeah. As far as the birth certificate that we talked about early, that you would want to, at least what I would try is to get a copy of that. And that if, you know, the court's assumption that I'm the trustee, I therefore merge the titles and extinguish the trust. email me and I'll give you a thing on merging of titles.
All right. Speak up.
What'd you have?
Come on up here, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
I've heard part of this is like making her, I don't know if you ever heard of this, Gail, but like making her trust property, then you're talking about trust and then just going and claiming your property and getting her out of jail that way.
But see, you can't claim a person as property. You can claim the name as property. Okay, that's what you should, that's how you should always get your kid back. Is you're not in there to get your kid, you're in there to get your property. That name that child has is your property. Why? Because you, as the parent, granted it to them. You have the highest claim by nature to that property, the name. So it's always about the name game. It isn't about the person. It's the name. It's the property. Not the person is not the property. The name is.
And the person's the surety at this
Yes.
point.
Person's always the surety. They know you're a real man or woman. By your actions, are you acting like surety? Okay. If you make a motion and you write a motion that says motion, you're acting as the defendant. That's just another key. Don't ever write the word motion, write the word writ. Common law is writ. I'm making a writ of whatever. Okay.
Yeah, if you issue a motion, because a lot of people that are just getting into this, you know, I would say, well, what kind of motion can I write? I say, you don't ever write a motion. That's subjecting yourself to their jurisdiction.
Only
Also-
plaintiffs and defendants write motions. Okay.
Also, I was also told that you want to do it handwritten and in pencil on your writs.
Well, you don't have to, but it helps because the handwriting is more powerful than typed. That shows you that you have the higher authority. Okay, I usually do that on appeals, or if you're going at a high level, then I get into the handwritten or in cursive. In other words, I'd do it in cursive. I wouldn't even print it because then you're for sure proving who you are. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? No, nobody else? Okay.
You mentioned that you can go straight to the U.S. Supreme Court on a habeas. Do you think that'd be more effective, doing the original jurisdiction to the U.S. Supreme Court as opposed to going, say, district? See,
Well,
right
you
now,
got to go to the district. You got to go to the district or circuit first with a writ of habeas corpus. You can't. I've never seen anybody go to straight to the Supreme Court with a writ of habeas.
okay, so you go to district, then you go to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and
Yeah.
then the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right. Why do you go there? Because the district judge can act as a chancery judge. And for sure at the circuit level they can. That's where they can see your constitutional rights. Okay, because there's an Article 3 judge looking at that paperwork, which in a writ of habeas means you either produce the person or you better be standing in front of me, a moving party, telling me what's going on and why they're in jail. That's a 72-hour limit that they have to appear in front of that judge and to explain themselves.
But only once you've made the writ
Right.
for
see,
habeas.
Right.
Texas, we had a situation, I won't tell you the county, but we did a habeas, and the DA actually looked it over first and put denied, and then he mailed it to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals.
You can't do. Yeah.
They can actually make comments on it, the DA, that the county where they got convicted.
Well, you got to understand in court, you got to give them an opportunity to respond to what you're doing, and vice versa. When they put motions in, they have to give you a 2-week notice. You have to give them notice that you filed something. It's, they call that what's fair. That's the equity part of the court. So if the opposing or moving party can put in a response, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
You just want to get it to the right judge. You want to get it to the right court so they can see what's going on. Where, again, constitutional rights can be seen.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, guys, right, okay, Jason's got one. Come on up. You gotta be up next to this mic.
Do you help people, that might want to submit a declaration of status?
That's what he does. That's what KL does.
Okay, okay.
That's his whole program, pretty much.
All right.
Because here's
So I
why.
will show, Kale, I brought my documents and I was going to show it to these guys if they want to see them to get an idea of what you do. So
Yeah.
I'll show Jason that when we're done.
All right, so let me explain why you have to do the declaration of status. You have to provide evidence you're a private person. U.S. citizens cannot get equity, cannot ask for their constitution. Only a private citizen can. So don't you think it would be important to have evidence of that private citizenship status in order to get access to, so you can be seen in that court? Because the presumption is you're a U.S. citizen until proven otherwise.
As in the corporate citizen.
Yes, and the corporate citizen, that you're surety for it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Ken?
Going through a state court and they're violating my constitutional rights all over the place. How would I go about doing a breach of trust for that?
Wait for the court case to be over and do a pleading as the plaintiff, federal district court. Isn't that where they take even civil rights violation? You got to go to federal civil court. You can't do it in their court. You got to go above them.
Yeah, because they can't see it.
Correct. You got to go to the right place. And the only other ticket to get in there is that you were denied your adequate remedy at law, is the phrase. The reason I'm here, Your Honor, is because I was denied, I was found guilty, I was denied my adequate remedy at law. That's the ticket to ask you that they might see it, other than providing evidence that you're a private citizen. Those are usually the two requirements, tickets, I call them tickets to get through the gate.
Okay.
So does doing the declaration of status also knock out terms in the IRS, not just U.S. citizen, but U.S. national and the individual as sole proprietor?
Oh, yeah, it does all of that, but don't ever use that term U.S. national or American national. That is, when you use that term, you immediately put yourself under the military territorial jurisdiction.
What about non-citizen? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Those are terms under their statutes and codes. Don't use them as your authority by claiming that's who you are, because that's what you're doing. You're immediately saying I'm under their territory jurisdiction. You're a Union State citizen. You're not an American or not a state national. You're not whatever Anna and David say. That has immediately got you into their jurisdiction.
Non-citizen national?
That's right. Just
okay. Okay.
Okay, Kale, do you want to tell them about whatever website or?
I don't have a website. I act in the private. I'm not public.
Okay. You have a bunch of videos, but that's a link. I
So
know
just
that.
ask me for the videos. I've got at least a dozen videos through Rice TV. All you got to do is email me and I'll send you the link where all of the videos are. And that's what the first place I would tell you to do is watch the videos. Watch the video on jurisdiction. Watch the video on the birth certificate. Watch it on the martial law. Watch it on the myriad Supreme Court cases that I go over. All of that stuff is relevant, and it's way too lengthy to try to get into the time frame here.
No, I know. I was just wanting to offer these guys. So I'll give them your email addresses and so they can request that. Darren, yes.
All right.
He'd come join us again because this is very
Okay.
and just see when he's available again.
Okay. Darren's asking me to ask both of you guys if you would be willing to come to other calls like this at other times, because they recognize the value of what you guys are offering.
Yeah, I would, and try to figure out what you want me to talk about.
Okay.
I'll explain everything that's going on. You just let me know what you want to know, what you want to hear.
Okay. FYI, KL, I sent you an email this morning, very early this morning. And when I get home, I was hoping that you'd have an answer for it. I know you're busy and you got everybody else to deal with today, but I was going to file those documents today, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right.
I will look at that as we hang up. How's that?
That sounds great. Okay, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on this.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Ron, get a hold of me. I got a couple questions for you too.
I've been wanting to get you guys together.
Well,
So, okay.
Ron could help me because I do kind of the stuff he does, but it takes too much of my time. I'd be more than happy to refer him over. That's the whole
Well,
point.
and like I've told both of you guys, y'all would complement each other. And, the way I see it is we're all in this together and we need to, share the burdens and share the information and help each other. There's too much work for any one person to do.
Right.
So,
That's why I
There's
could
a
send
lot
it to
of
Ron.
need out there in the community.
there's a
Absolutely.
lot.
The market demand is extremely high, wouldn't you say, Ron?
It's just like a tsunami.
It's an infinite amount right now. It's just it's
Exactly.
never
And it's
ending.
getting more and the wave's getting higher and higher every day.
Right.
Yep. Okay, guys, thank you. And I'll be talking to both of you real soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Great job, KL. Great job.
Oh, thanks, Ron. You too. And again, you can spend more time with them than me. I'd be more than happy to let you take that kind of stuff from me. Thanks.
Back at you.
All right, see you guys later.
Right there, stay on for that.
Okay. They're saying that there's one more speaker here that's coming on, and y'all are welcome to stay for that if you want. I don't know anything about it. Larry can tell you about it, I guess. Glenn's
Glenn lost him.
Oh, that's Glenn.
Glenn
Showing up.
Okay.
Glenn Fern, are you on here?
I'm here. I'm kind of looking for KL's email addresses again.
I'll get that to you, Glenn.
Can you put them in the chat?
I don't have a way to do that, but I can send it to you through email later.
Okay.
Okay. Your next guy?
Yeah, he's
already on there queued up? Okay. So they're saying that you guys are welcome to stay for this next guy. Can you tell them what this guy?
The next gentleman, he's also a patriot, and he'll be talking some of the same things that maybe you might have interest in. Cody, are you there?
We know both of you guys are busy, so that's your call.
Canadian Javelin. Okay, you can get on to
They may have already hung up.
to our Zoom. He saw them, right?
Okay.
You got yours muted?
Guys, I'm actually thankful to this.
Yeah, we see you there, actually Alaska, but asked
Oh.
us telling us to do.
He's
We
muted.
have to probably click it ourselves here.
No, he's muted on his end.
You're still muted. There's no way you can unmute on your, it'll be at the very bottom of your page. To unmute it.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes you have to sign out, sign back in.
It's up here.
Well, what we might do is
You have to move your mouse down,
move your mouse down to where,
and then you'll pop up.
and
And
the
then,
menu will pop up. It's the far left side for unmuting.
Yeah, I'm clicking it and it's not spawning.
Why don't you reboot your computer?
Okay, I'll sign out. I'll be right back.
Okay,
Did he sign in or did he go in as free?
I'm not sure.
If he went in as free, you're not gonna be able to agree, you have to sign in.
Okay.
And sometimes even with free though, I've logged out.
Oh, you may have to sign yourself in. What is it? Did I ask you to, for information to register? Yeah.
Trying to,
Sometimes it's free, I can get out, go back here, put my email and password.
Yeah, see, you saw us before, right? You saw the previous speakers? He saw that. When he watched them.
Yeah, but you can't, sometimes you have to get out or go back. Sometimes, find that if I hit straight in, then I went in thinking. It's probably if I go to the site, go to the meeting, have to get out of the Zoom. Like, I do the password again.
Dale is his nickname. I don't know.
hey, he's on.
No.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, you're unmuted now.
back.
That's muted again.
Oh, it just did it again.
Yep, just went back to mute.
I can hear you fine.
Well, we may do it, we just listen to you. For all this stuff.
That's Glenn.
Sound. That was Glenn, okay. Brett. Cody. Saying across the face.
All right, should be able to get it now. There we go.
All right.
Okay. Boy, that was like pulling hen's teeth, huh?
It's great. Okay. Everybody's taking a little bit of a restroom break right now because we just got through. So maybe about 5-10 minutes. Are you okay to talk longer than we thought?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I've got some time.
Okay, so be ready for you in just a few minutes.
Okay, no problem. So tell me about those two gentlemen that that you guys were just talking with.
I'll let you know. Karen. I'll just, yeah. You know more about it than I do. That's what next speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Cody, what you need to know?
Oh, I was just wondering about those other two guys that were just talking. It sounded like they knew what they were talking about.
Were you listening into their things?
Just the end of it, yeah.
Okay. Are they still on?
No, they're gone.
They're gone. Okay. Okay. So generally, Ron Adams is a forensic CPA, and he's into this whole thing as well. KL is the one that helps you get out of the system, and part of one of the benefits is that you don't have to pay income tax anymore because you're going to opt out of that. That you have the opportunity, and you're going to notify the government. You're going to file certain things in the public record, and when you file this, there's a couple of packets. You send the first packet, and he gives you all the documents. Okay, he has them pre-filled in for you, and so once you get all those packets, you review it for errors, and then you file it with this certain county in this other state. And after you get that back, your copies with all the stamps on it showing it's been filed, then you send notices to 6 entities in the government, actually 5, and then another entity. And after that, you're out of the system. And then you continue learning, and you set up your private trust and all this other stuff. So it's kind of deep. But these two guys are the best that I've ever run across, and good people. So
yeah, I was impressed with was the guy, he said Dr. Tom on his handle there on the video feed, but
his
KL is his name.
His real name is Thomas, but he goes by KL since it's a nickname since high school.
I see. No, his experience inside the courtroom definitely came through pretty quickly there. That was, I wouldn't mind having his contact information. The fact that he even knew that Chancery was available at the federal level, that's something that most people, yeah.
That's right. I'll give the information to Darren because I don't have yours and you don't have mine, and I don't want to broadcast it on YouTube. But okay. I'll get it to them, and then he can send it to you.
All right.
Okay. When you get tired of more shingles, this is honestly very. It's a full. That's what appreciate. So you can only pay this for. Let's go. Yeah, they don't accept it. He's got some left here. I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Did you know? We're getting a car right. Yeah. Yeah. And he's a big deal. And the car here, what? Senate, don't care. Take out times like this. Sure, I don't want. In favor, if they reject within the 72 hours, there's a discharge. Only like this case, you intend. Get out of your car. a promissory note, this payment, it's not just a contract, it's a payment. What is the not it's payment. Okay, so when you're taking out I've heard a lot of things. I think the trust. It's there, it was time. State, it's a double trust. Well, the defense. Airplane, and also for the else, it's a contract, it's a agreement. Sit around, this. Turns out you're such a good Pharisee. Okay. Bring this. It basically doesn't trust. And like this. Thanks. I think this is what I created on this paper, it's testing it, but we might be able to get all these out. Sure. All the feeling, I'm just like, waiting for friends. Yeah, it is not even interesting. You want to take some questions. Okay. Let's see the stuff. Yeah, you're not going to speak for and you. Truth is never. So we want you to say that, right? Sure, you can ground it. There's still a find out. Yes, so lay information. So I think I just say shoot to spend your money. You only go to it's on first. What do they call it? Says you don't finally say you put your job that's fine. You file like this. They can't do that. Well, if I said, that can't. They don't, they can't do that. It comes out of your system. You're supposed to get, by the time you let you know, you don't blame it, it doesn't say what they call it. They can't watch yours. Just want to get out of the jail. They do this. Please, don't like it. For years, you got to talk about that. So now I'm reading bills of the threatened very much to use the team. Just make it do this. What's really, you know, possibly was $6. So, okay, scope and your
Cody, we'll start here shortly. We're just waiting for one more person to come back in the room.
Okay, sounds good.
I stay away from. Yeah, her. What? When I did say like this, like, well, since the pictures, the other picture, bridge at city.
There's another person that signs on it. It could be the JP, it could be, some other government. Okay, when they sign on that, as they register. That's the creation date of the all caps name. They are notified. That's what else gives you the debit card. This is your figure. It's like a prepaid card. This is so she gave this card to them. So I didn't know it. You were at the bar, rubber set game, and they do it here. And her wheelings and listen to more good if it's been. And they presume that you might actually do whatever they create in the states. I think totally. You got to type it all in. You do it. It works. Just when you turn 18, you were supposed to have a car right to the plane. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm staying here. Because what they just sold was my money was rich. Oh, because it's they don't want one has some beware to come out. They just create a nice out for others. You just want, I got a title out there, jet cash and life deals, so you just,
Then we take the first still a snail, can create a ground questions curious instead of that. That's first thing. Then they distribute by some so they start in the ground for their world. Okay, they make money on how it's called on the bikes money. They take 2 days short, $8, they're like. You're fucking rich, you know, got that car over here, now get that look. You know, it's your boring, and you're boring, that's way more. Like Robert gets already, I was. It's boring, like as the milk or split, and so not even in the morning is the time is down. Let's see, I don't know, there was a say your mother is in the same body, got medication, Chris Crystal lost this, like, there was a short. Are you getting, I need to remember where that kids by the 42 years, like, I should be a state. Oh, wow. Everything like that, like, I'm from this, it's like, Chris, amazing. They're living there, I think they're even. John or and Joanna live was in the second piece, there's the left to this first, which is his body and the smash. They said, so, woman. They broke the shot out of the building. These fly systems think they're the other stars, get so that's the gist of it. So when they walk around out the second down this big state can't like they create this extreme pattern. You think about something. So
Hey, we're gonna get started now for our last speaker. So if you would, please take your seats. We got one more speaker there to talk to us. This last gentleman was located by Steve. And Steve, can you tell us a little bit about Cody?
I met Cody on the RT Zoom with Denise, and he's very knowledgeable about state nationals getting free the system out of the matrix and stuff. So we're just here to enjoy him sharing his knowledge.
Okay, Cody.
Yes, sir.
We'd like to hear from you now. And,
Okay.
I'll let you know we have about, say, 20 minutes to, give you some questions.
Okay. All right. Well, little quick background. I got into this whole movement probably about, almost 7 years ago now, and really was held. My feet got held to the fire during COVID. My family ended up with some things going on. We got institutionally attacked with IRS audits, bank accounts frozen. Got charged with a few things, got arrested, thrown in jail overnight. And so I was, kind of forced to figure this stuff out pretty quickly. And I'm still here, so I ended up figuring it out. But yeah, as far as what I want to talk about, I would just let you guys, kind of whatever you're dealing with, and I'll tend to kind of try to explain things from kind of more of a a strategy standpoint of actually dealing with it. The best way, in my opinion, to learn this stuff is to interact with it, use it, and the best, and you never want to try anything technically that you can't, or tactically that you can't perform technically. And
now, Cody, as far as the topic, do you want us to pick the topic and you address it, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, anything that anybody's dealing with or has questions with, there's a way in which you can incorporate the information in pretty much any situation. So it might as well make it relevant for something that you guys are actually dealing with.
Let's start with the IRS, and then when we get that one done, we'll have another next one to talk to you about.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my comprehension of the IRS is that it's a Puerto Rican corporation, which means that it's a maximum of commercial contract laws that which one creates, one controls. So being that Puerto Rico is a possession of the corporate United States, the entity that was delegated by the Constitution to exist inside the 10 square miles in Washington, D.C., any holding or any entity that's subject to the United States that agrees that it's subject to the United States is the only entity that's subject to the jurisdiction of the IRS. So that's kind of the main point that you need to keep in your mind with dealing with that. I've actually got affidavits, though, a series of affidavits from my mentor that you can even get out of paying taxes as a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Because of their internal definitions and the way that they put it together, which, I mean, it's a nightmare nonsense to try and get all the information yourself. But these series of affidavits was handed to me when I was under the gun, so to speak, and it stopped an audit immediately before all of my state national for the Enslegius was filed, and before I was claimed sovereignty and all that kind of thing. So it's effective and it works.
Is it also possible to get refunds of the last 3 years that someone had possibly paid in, like on a 941? Can you get those 3 years back?
I don't have any experience with the 3-year situation. I do know that in commercial contract law, if you send them an invoice and write a conditional acceptance and they don't respond to it, which they never do, you could theoretically get 10 years back. But this kind of leads into my philosophy on all of this. What's your piece worth? You're going to go poke a bear and, go to battle with the IRS to try to extract resources out of them. You're going to have an uphill battle. And that, I always, whenever I help people and whenever I consult with whatever they're dealing with, the first part of the consultation that I do is, what's your definition of victory? And I usually don't get involved with cases where people want retribution. If their goal and their definition of victory is to be left alone, and just go about their lives and do their thing, then that's usually a pretty easily attainable goal. But if you start getting into vengeance and retribution and gaining money, the resources back, it's not that it's impossible. And theoretically, according to the maxims of contract law with affidavits and contracts, it's entirely doable. But how much do you want to battle? What is your time worth? And if you were dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions, it might be worth it. It might be worth the risk. But if you're dealing with tens of thousands, in my opinion, you're much better off just going around with private plates and getting cops to pull you over and charging them from your schedule of fees. You'll get a lot more resources with a lot more success rate interacting with officialdom, getting them to deny you due process and deny you, the rights that the Constitution puts those public servants in. If resources are your goal out of this, then that's a much easier way to do it, in my opinion.
So
and more effective.
I'm working for Amazon. The only option I have is U.S. citizen exempt. Yet 20.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. But
okay, as far as I know.
Well, and the reason why I would disagree with you there is because in Title 8 of the United States Code, there's numerous political statuses that you can claim for the Enslegius. And that's the part of this that most people don't comprehend, that like a lot of guys that have been in it for a real long time don't really explain really well, because it becomes so second nature to think of yourself, the vessel that you occupy, your biological property, is just surety, right? And KL was talking to, or whatever his name is, was talking about that a little bit. But the distinction in the relationship that you have to the government is that they can't see you, they can't talk to you. It's a matter of commercial maxim contract law that entities must be of like kind for there to be any privity of contract. And so when you file for the state national and say, I am the American state national and things, what you're doing is you're actually speaking for the Enslegius, the corporation that is on the short form birth certificate that the state created on your behalf. When your biological property was registered through the process that we all know about with the, signing, your mother signing as the informant at the foundling hospital and all that kind of stuff. So So it's real important to remember that distinction when you're thinking about remedies and your process and the way through all this stuff, is that everything that's in the U.S. code applies to the ens legis, not to you, the living man or woman. There's Supreme Court case precedent that was actually recently referenced by Clarence Thomas in both the Chevron deference, then also in an EPA case that I think it's lessee of Waddell, if I recall correctly. I've got it. I can actually post it here in the, excuse me, in the chat. But the opine in that Supreme Court is that once the revolution started, quote, once the revolution started, the people themselves became sovereign, end quote. And so you have to, Kale was talking about it a little bit there, where he exists in the private only, and his portal into the commerce in order to deal with the courts and with the corporation and judges and police and all that kind of stuff is that corporation that was created on, you know, on behalf of his name, that was registered with the birth certificate by the United States Corporation and subcorporations. And so that's a real important piece of information to really comprehend when you're doing all this stuff, because what that'll do is it'll allow you to kind of strategize and come up with plans based on the reality of the situation, which is that you're pretty much like the puppet master, you know, using your will and your intent with your words to move and make statements and make claims out in commerce through that ens legis. So that ens legis, you can claim that it's a state national in Title 8 of the United States Code, Section 1101, paragraph 821, because it's listed right there. And
yeah, I know that the U.S. citizen really doesn't exist. What I was getting at, and I thank you for that, because that helped a lot. But that's the only options right now that Amazon has given me. And I quit paying taxes in 2023. I did a rescission with a repentance letter in 2023, and they have not responded back. But today I have to have my 2024 taxes done if I'm going to do them. So my question is, should I file or not file, and go forward from there?
are you confident in the paperwork that you sent, that it's correct? And did you put a clause in there that references now dissent judgment through silence's acquiescence, through non-response?
I believe so.
Did you
I'll have to
take
look
that?
at it.
And okay, so in the Administrative Procedure Act, you have to give your adversary 3 opportunities. The first one, which is the initial encounter, where you send them the offer to contract or the conditional acceptance or the rescission or the notice and demand or the writ or whatever it is. And then you, in that contract, you specify a time that they have to respond. And if they don't respond, then they agree to all the terms and conditions. And the only way that they can respond is through a point-for-point counter affidavit under penalty of perjury. And so when that time period has gone by, you send them a notice of fault. And of course, all this needs to be certified proof of service, either through certified mail or registered mail. And then you need to document all of your return receipts and write another affidavit, right? And so you do this 3 times. And the last one is called final notice of default summary judgment. And so if you haven't gone through that process, that private administrative remedy process that's defined in the Administrative Procedures Act, then you do not have a court of record that you can take into court and get a summary judgment. And so that is the kind of the stargate, if you will, into actually getting performance on these things that we're trying to do, is following that Administrative Procedures Act to the letter. And you can define your own terms in your affidavits and in your notice of fault and in your notice of default and your summary judgment and all that kind of stuff. But it has to be a fair amount of time. And if you give them 10 days on the final notice, then you actually don't go in for, send them a notice of summary judgment until 3 days after that, right? Because you always give an extra 3 days. And so if you have done that, then I would, and you're confident in defending that process if they come after you, then I would say don't file. If you file anything, it says right on the bottom of all those forms, I certify under penalty of perjury, that I am subject to the IRS jurisdiction. I mean, it's not exactly in that verbiage, but
Right.
yeah. But I mean, if you are confident in your process and your paperwork, I would highly recommend that you study the Administrative Procedures Act and make sure you go through that process and have all the paperwork ready to go. Once you go through that series of 3, you take the whole thing and you put it on the public record someplace in one of their counties, because that's in commerce, and the IRS exists only in commerce. And then you sit back, and if they try to come after you, you say you always agree with thine adversary. So I'd conditionally accept your terms as long as you can prove that you have produce the the rebuttal, produce the performance, produce the evidence that they have the authority to do what they're doing, whatever it is, and you should be good to go. And then you put penalties in that rebuttal, in that response, that if they come, and you reference your schedule of fees that you've also got on there. If they give you an offer to contract, that was unsolicited, they owe you $50,000 right off the bat. If they use your copyrighted property without your express written permission on a handwritten notice, a handwritten license with your writing signature, autograph with your blood seal thumbprint, then they owe you $250,000 per occurrence, and so that's your enforcement. You don't try to put people in jail. You charge them in commerce, and that's the whole notion of everything that they do to us. It's just that they've also got the tacit agreement that was surety, so they take the biological property into custody while they're performing to the terms of their penal cell.
So what could I do with Amazon so that I'm not having to click U.S. citizen exempt?
I would probably send Human Resources a letter, and then send them true copies of your affidavits that define your political status, reference the U.S. code, and ask for remedy. Like, hey, this is not my status. I'm the entity that is engaging in commerce is a state national, as defined in 8 U.S.C. 1101 A21. So, and then you can also reference Title 18, that if you say you're a U.S. citizen and you're actually not, I think it's 18 USC 911.
Right.
That's a felony, and it won't be you, it'll be them. And so, you can, and then if they try to can you, then you're wrong, discrimination and all this other kind of stuff. And then that would also be misprision of felony and fraud and some Title 42 stuff, for denial of right of self-determination. And so there's all kinds of things that you could pull together and reference in regard to what they might be subjecting themselves to as far as criminal penalties, if they don't recognize and work with you to recognize the state national status. But once again, even a U.S. citizen doesn't have to pay taxes. Like in Title 26, you can go right now and look it up. 26 USC 7806, paragraph B. Construction of title is what it's called. And if you read that, it says right in there that nothing in there is meant to have any legislative intent or legal effect.
Okay.
Nothing in the entire Title 26. And then also at the house.gov, you can look at the different titles themselves, if you can find it in their website. And I've been there a couple of times, and you can see it that it says right in there that Title 26 is not positive law. It's private law. Only for government employees.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Cody, here's my next question.
What?
I got a question for you. I don't know if you have any expertise or knowledge on this, but we are trying to understand how to use the 1099A in order to have items that we might want, such as a house or a car discharged via the 1099-A, and we're learning how to fill it out properly. And we're not trying to take a massive advantage of it, but occasionally might want to get a car with it. And I didn't know if you had any on how to do that.
So I would highly discourage you from that process. And the reason why is because officialdom has taken a dislike to that. The 1099 original issuance discount, right? Process. And there's all kinds of charges that usually come along with that. You might be able to fly away, get away with it, flying under the radar a couple of times, but you never know when it's going to come back and bite you. And the reason why the standing, I guess, or the charges that end up coming with that is that you're using their corporation that they made on your behalf to extrapolate the value backwards using UCC Article 3, and so when you start getting into the 1099, that's not necessarily a proprietary form, but it's definitely a proprietary process of the corporate entity that is the IRS, the Puerto Rican company. And so you're kind of reaching in through a portal that is international, and you don't really have standing to do that, in my opinion. And that's how they end up getting you. If you want to be able to extract value with this knowledge and be able to get a hold of things, real property, what I really recommend looking into is using UCC Article 3, Section 205, which is called a special endorsement. Okay. You need to study the UCCs in their entirety. But in Article 3 of the Uniform Commercial Code, that covers negotiable instruments. And there's definitions in there. So you have to really know it inside and out. And what you can end up doing then is writing a contract with your bank, or any bank for that matter. And the way in which that whole system already works is that the bank claims your promissory note based on the signature that you use on behalf of the ens legis, right? And that becomes the same as cash. Under House Joint Resolution 192 of the 73rd Congress, it's discharged dollar for dollar at the comptroller of the currency discount window at the Federal Reserve. So they take that promissory note, which literally becomes a treasury bond, right? Because it's a promise to pay, which is by definition a negotiable instrument. And they exchange it for Federal Reserve notes. So you're really just exchanging a debt note for a debt note is all you're doing. But the credit comes from your signature out in the real world, that, yeah, I'm going to perform to the terms of this contract. So if you write your own contract, right, based on the terms that you want that are good for you, and use, Kale was just talking about it, about a handwritten instrument is more powerful than a typeset. Well, that's in the UCCs. It's defined that anything handwritten supersedes anything typeset, and anything typeset supersedes anything that's printed. So, a typewriter will, if you take that promissory note and type at the end of it, everything before this is null and void, put your terms and conditions of the contract, and take it back and sign it in front of the officer and hand it to them, and they take it, that's acceptance. It's a done deal. Well, if you're in the office and you write in the proper things with a blue pen and sign it correctly using their own system that puts a firewall between you, the living man, and the ens legis, especially after you've done the redemption process where you've taken superior claim to that ens legis in their commercial chamber, then you're first in line and first in time to any charge that can happen against that ens legis, and you're using your own commercial hypothecation of your original first in line, first in time security agreement against that ens legis to hypothecate the value of the promissory note. And the way you would do this is at the end of the negotiation for whatever you're trying to get, you just say, balance paid in full, remit payment to whatever the institution is that you're at, as in full amortization of maturity of the loan and the amount of, let's say it's $100,000 loan. They would have gotten, $175,000 in fees and interest if they would have taken it out. So in the amount of $175,000 US dollars per 12 USC 411, because if you promise to pay him in lawful money, because of the emergency of 1933, they took the ability to pay that away. So then the remedy is House Joint Resolution 192 of the 73rd Congress. You just get to discharge it. And so then at the end of that, you go pay to the order of, the all caps name of the ens legis, and you put a dash at the end of it, define it as the ens legis. And then by, and then however you sign your autograph, your living man name, dash agent, UCC 3-205 without recourse. And that without recourse is in UCCs. When you sign it without recourse, there's nothing anybody can do. They can't come after you. That's the reason why you can't come after a mortgage company without getting charged with fraud, because they've used UCC 3205 to claim that security in international maritime law after 72 hours because it wasn't claimed. And it's called special endorsement. So you use their system of fraud against them, and you end up with a promissory note that they have to take to the Federal Reserve window on your behalf. And if they don't fund it the way that you've instructed them to, then their entire system of fraud that they've used since 1933 to lend money comes crashing down. Almost every single mortgage that you can get a hold of, if you can get to discovery, will have a reference to UCC 3205, and it'll be signed by the vice president of the financial institution. It'll say, paid to the order of the financial institution, whatever it is, by the VP or CEO or CFO or whatever their title is in the company, then their signature, and it'll say UCC 3205 without recourse. So if you do that right in front of them, what are they going to do? They have to pay. So that's what I would do instead. But you do have to have the credit even to walk in the door initially, right? And it's kind of a little bit underhanded. So what I do is I tell people this at first, and I'd be like, yeah, we'll write you into the contract, like as an administrator to administrate this, get it to the comptroller of the currency and get it to the Federal Reserve window to fund this contract with Federal Reserve notes. We'll cut you in for 5 or 10% or whatever you think you need. It's an administrative fee. There's nothing wrong with that. You just add it to the bottom line.
Okay, so you can actually get with the finance manager, like at a car dealership, and say, hey, I'll cut you, 10% or what have you.
Well, with a car dealership, it's a little different because you get when you sign that paper, you walk out, and half the time they don't even look at it until after it gets to the finance company, right? And that's the reason why you get the temporary plates and all that stuff, is because they're going to wait 3 days and then they're going to claim it on international maritime salvage loans, right? They're going to claim that security that they get paid for, even though you created the credit through your agreement to their administrative contract to administer the loan. And so what you end up doing is you just cut in front of them, claim it first, because you're the one that originated it. It's your intent, it's your value, it's your credit to begin with. You have first claim rights to that security note. And so if you use their own system against them, by the time it gets to the finance office or somebody that even understands what it means, you've already got the keys. You've already said, no, I'm not going to register it. I'm not going to get a title. I'm exporting it. You've got the manufacturer's certificate of origin, and you've got your copies that say where to pay to the order of. So what ends up happening usually is they just leave you alone. You have the car.
Right, you got possession, that's 9/10 law. So
right.
you basically you cut in line before the finance manager proofs it out.
I'm sorry?
Basically, well, you're getting it prior to them scrutinizing the agreement, because they're going to go ahead and take your signature and get additional money off that contract, correct?
Yeah, and the salesman doesn't even know what's going on. They don't know anything about any of this stuff. And so when you sign it that way, that paperwork will get to the finance company, and they'll go, holy crap, we can't claim this. It's already been claimed. And they'll probably call you and say, hey, come back in. It's, no, I already signed. I expect the money to show up to the account that I put on there. And then, you know, when fund the promissory note, you guys will get paid. So if they want to get paid for the car, then they have to take it to the comptroller of the currency window. And those people are public servants. They're just performing the task. They don't have any skin in the game other than they're just supposed to do their jobs. So they either just let it go, or they take it to the currency window and fund the loan fund the promissory note the way that it was instructed to be funded.
Okay. Now, for example, if you get a bill that comes in the mail, like a utility bill, you basically just change that coupon that's on the statement and you make it out to be a promissory note.
So the definition of a negotiable instrument is an unconditional promise to pay or an unconditional order to pay. That's the definition of a negotiable instrument. So any negotiable instrument that happens in commerce, in any of the corporate state of states, you can claim with UCC 3205 through a special endorsement by signing it. And, you know, so you can take that invoice, as long as it's not already claimed, and especially endorse it under UCC 3205 without recourse, pay to the order of, and remit back to the account, send it back to them. Now, are they going to follow those procedures? Not right off the bat. They're not even going to know what it is. They're not even going to get it. They don't, but you're going to have to go to court and prove it, right? So you need to have proof of service. You need to have an affidavit. You need to have your private administrative procedure done so that when you go to court, you've got your silver and gold, you've got your express trust, and you've got all your contracts claimed on public record on UCC 1 financing statement so that the judge has nothing to adjudicate. They can't say that you're a pauper. They can't say that you're a ward of the state. They can't say that you're an incompetent. They can't say that you're an infant or an idiot. You know, you're standing there as the agent to the ens legis, ready to settle the matter. And if there's controversy, you're there to settle it. So if there's criminal charges, you accept the charges for value and ask them to access the trust and discharge the debt under HJR 192 of the 73rd Congress. What's my remedy, Judge?
Ever see that last slide? The last slide, right?
Steve,
Say again?
Last slide. Can you repeat?
the last site is HJR 192.
House Joint Resolution 192 of the 73rd Congress. And that is where FDR got charged with treason for confiscating all the lawful money. And what ended up happening is HJR 192 is the remedy to get the government out of hot water for removing the ability for people to pay their debts in commerce under the Constitution. And so basically, you know, the ability to pay was suspended, and they through HJR 192, we were given the ability to discharge debt, which is to tender it to a later date.
So I have a question real quick. Has that been codified in Public Law 7310?
I don't. It has been codified. It's in the U.S. code. It's incorporated into the UCCs as well. But I don't know. It might be 7310. I've seen that, but I went right to the National Archives and got a certified copy of the Act of Congress. And unless it's been superseded, which it hasn't, I think that it's in there. I think it might also be referenced in 50 USC 95A, if I recall correctly, which is where the national banking emergency is codified.
Okay, back on the subject of taking a bill that comes in the mail, you know, you may have a reoccurring utility bill and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
When that comes in, you're going to make that out to be a promissory note because you have the right. It's a negotiable instrument, so you can change it to what you want to. And
it's a promise. It's an order to pay, is what it is. An invoice is an order to pay.
Okay, and then if you put without recourse, that'll protect you from should protect you from any kind of fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
UCC 3205 without recourse.
Okay, now would you need to change at the bottom of the remittance, the coupon? Don't you need to put some type of routing number that might be your Social Security or a Federal Reserve location? Do you put that at the bottom of the coupon?
I wouldn't. And the reason why I wouldn't is because you're not accessing any pre-charged account at the Treasury through the Federal Reserve, through the Social Security, through the auto trust or the CUSIP number. You're just using the UCCs as they're written to claim that promise to pay and direct who to pay it to with a special endorsement under UCC 3205.
Okay.
Now,
so
if you've done the redemption process and you've got a Treasury Direct account and you've sent your birth certificate bond in and it's been accepted and you've done your private administrative procedure there, and you've given them opportunity to cure, and then you've also sent affidavits to the Secretary of State and the Attorney General in the state that you domicile, and asking them to rebut the ability to do this because, as one of we the people, you've been removed all of your ability to pay your debts. So what you're doing is you're setting up your own private banker system where you're going to be creating an international bill of exchange, where you're going to promise, you're going to issue a bond to the Treasury that you're going to redeem under HJR 192 of the 73rd Congress, right? And because you're going to issue it in lawful US dollars under 12 USC 411, but because HJR 192 suspended the ability to pay that bond, you're going to discharge it then, but they have to honor it because their rules say that any bond that they get, they have to perform to the terms of and under commercial contract law. So unless you've gone through that process, you don't want to try and access an account that isn't there that you don't have authorization to access.
Kathy's got a question.
Okay. You want to bring the phone right there?
Yeah, how do you discharge a credit card debt?
Rescission all of the original signatures and issue an affidavit that says you claim all the previous orders to pay or promises to pay under UCC 3205, and then you got to go to court to enforce it.
Sure. I got a question. I twice I went to county jail and they arraigned me, and the arraigning judge asked me what I told. They asked me if asked anybody who's a citizen. I said no, I'm not a citizen. They asked me what's my status. Both times I told them I'm a state national. Does that help me with my standing in court?
No, because a state national is only a political status for the ens legis, and so it helps. It's not. I mean, it's better than a U.S. citizen, but it's not good. So as anytime you go to court, this is what I was talking about at first, is that you're going into a seance essentially, right? Like they're representing all dead entities, and so you need to go in on special divine appearance or on special appearance as a private citizen. And it depends on what your definition of victory is, right? I think if I recall correctly, you ended up having a wreck with a, was that you? Ended up.
Right. Now,
Okay.
on that second arrest, they didn't arraign me until after 48 hours of my arrest. And I think that's a technical issue where they should drop it.
They got 72 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. But they can detain you for 72 hours on suspicion, which is nonsense, which you can, if there isn't anything that you did wrong, you can, if you get it dismissed, and you can charge them $2,000 a minute for those 72 hours. If you've got your schedule of fees done, if you've got your affidavits done.
So if I had it down in advance, right?
Yeah.
If I had it already previously established, right?
Right.
So I need to do that.
So in that instance, when I was arrested for asking the court clerk for their oath of office during all the COVID shit, when I got charged with criminal trespass and reckless endangerment, all kinds of other nonsense because I walked into my kid's school without a mask on, I ended up basically just asking the judge a bunch of questions, and I'm really confused. Your Honor, am I entitled to intelligent defense in your courtroom? Yes. Okay, well, I'm confused. I don't understand why I'm here. I filed paperwork on the way in the door. It defines my status.
Terry's asking to repeat the last thing you said.
About.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just relaying a story about me asking the judge a bunch of questions, because they put me in jail And then I got myself out using, by all the living man dash agent for the Ens Legis, and told them that, you referenced UCC Article 3, that, provide the evidence that this is not an instrument, a negotiable instrument, promissory note to secure the collateral for the charges, the penal sums under Alaska statute. And of course, what ended up happening is they vacated that charge in the local venue and then recharged me in a different town. And because I ended up stopping them every 6 ways from Sunday and all the stuff they were trying to do. And because I was in town and I was able to show up and file things in response to what they were charging me with based on, the exposing the fraud, they ended up vacating it, recharging me in a different venue so that they did this at 8:30 at night on a Friday. And then the arraignment was for 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. And here in Southeast Alaska, we've got no roads in between towns. So it's not like I could drive over there and do the same thing. I would have had to get on a plane or a boat, and it was in the middle of my fishing season, so I couldn't make it there. So I called in and still asked the same questions about, what jurisdiction the court was operating in. He wouldn't tell me. So if you're going to challenge jurisdiction, you're going to have to file a motion. And it's like, are you giving me legal advice, Your Honor? And no, that's procedure. I said, well, can't I file a notice and demand? Or can't I reference Rule 17 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, the real party in interest? And, and they just kind of got real quiet. And so in that instance, my definition of success was to be left alone. And so they were charging me with things that I could have gone to jail for like a year over. And so what I offered them at the end of asking all those questions, because I told them, I'm really confused. And of course, is this a court? When I first came in, is this a court of record? Will I be able to get a certified copy of the transcript of this arraignment after leaving the courtroom today? And yes, you will, and so, to make sure that everything was on record and that everything was recorded. And then, so I started asking them all those questions that told them that I knew their game. I knew that they were only there charging the Ens Legis. I knew that it was all just a matter of accounting. I knew that I was only able to go to jail if I agreed to as surety to the bonds that they created on my behalf through charging me basically with trusteeship and violating that trust law, which is their corporate policy statutes, right? So I was able to ask, do you have any evidence that I'm subject to the statutes? I'm a live living man. I'm here in my sovereign capacity as a private citizen. And if this is a tort claim, which is a tort claim means damages, then where's the injured party? If this is a breach claim, produce the contract that I knowingly entered into with a wet ink signature on it that would define the terms of my performance. So I'm unaware of any contract. If this is a criminal charge, where is the victim? So those are the only 3 jurisdictions that the Constitution defines. If this is a Title 28 authorized court under the Department of Justice of the United States of America, I'm very confused why I'm here. So by the end of all of that, the judge started moving along with, telling me what was going to happen. And I was like, Your Honor, you can't raise a jury of my peers. The only thing you can raise are sureties to the bonds of the bankruptcy. Said, where are you going to find sovereign nationals, sovereign one of we the people in this town? So as far as I know, I'm the only one. You haven't produced a victim. You haven't produced a contract that I violated, and you haven't produced any tort damages, any evidence of damages. So how about this? How about I make an offer to settle the matter right here? You guys can get your net retentions. I'll ask for this to be sealed because I'll offer my private copyrighted protected information to be added on special deposit to the docket today for return at a later date with interest. That way it'll protect you individually from any copyright infringement on Title 15. You'll be able to seal this. The prosecutor, the judge, and the clerk will still get their net retentions. You'll be able to put my name in the paper, and everybody just walks away. So I would be willing to offer a no contest to disorderly conduct under Alaska statute in order to settle the matter. The judge just goes, prosecutor, and prosecutor goes, yes. couldn't say yes fast enough. And so that was it.
Good deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's your definition of success, right? I gave him a way out. I gave him a conviction that would exonerate their officers for false arrest. I gave him the ability to make it look like they just took a plea deal, right? And it was in their best interest to do so because all of their puppet masters that have blackmail and corruption leverage over them, they might not have even known because everything was sealed, right? Because I told them that my copyrighted property, I was going to put on special deposit for the duration of the proceedings to protect their interest and grant a license for return at a later date with interest.
I got a separate. I got somebody. They're in an employment contract. Can a trust be in contract with the living being?
Yes, but
trying to get out.
But okay, so it depends on the kind of trust first. If it's a statutory trust or if it's an implied trust that's created by interacting with the ens legis, then no, because you can't commingle the public and the private. Okay.
Sure.
But if it's an Article 1, Section 10 pure contract trust, by definition, either the grantor, trustor, or which could then be the executor of the trust, or the trustee or one of the beneficiaries have to be, or can be natural persons or individuals or one of we the people. And that's the way that I enter commerce anymore. I don't use any of their stuff. I use completely Article 1, Section 10 pure contract trusts because they're actually in the same standing as the corporate United States itself from a political status standpoint. And the reason why that is because it goes back to that Supreme Court case precedent that when the revolution started, the people themselves became sovereign. We have the unlimited ability to contract under Article 1, Section 10. Well, the pure contract trust is a protected entity under that constitutional Article 1, Section 10. And so what ends up happening is you write your trust indenture to suit the needs of what you want to do. Write the immunities right into it if you want to, So, hey, unless the only way that this trust can be charged in a corporate tribunal under martial administrative capacity under the Department of Justice, the current Department of Justice, is if there's a victim or a crime. Other than that, they have to pay $500,000 even to get access to it. Like, yeah, we'll give it to you preemptively. Like, yeah, if you want to subpoena this, you can have it all, but you got to pay us $500,000. That's the price, or $5 million, or whatever you want to make it, right? And that's a enforceable contract. So if they subpoena those, like if you're doing something in commerce, and somebody tries to sue you, and they think that then they subpoena it and break their own rules and don't know that they're not allowed to, but the bank gives them the information and the marshal shows up or US or somebody shows up and actually seizes it. It's right in there. Okay, pay up. You got the information. Pay me. You're right. And then what ends up happening is when they get themselves in hot water like that, usually what ends up happening is it just falls off the docket. It's gone. They just disappear.
I got a question for you. About 2 years ago, I was SWAT team. They ended up driving military vehicles through the front and the back of the house. They shot me 9 times. The arrest report says warrantless. They had no warrant. They took me straight to jail, not to a magistrate. It's required here in Texas. I've challenged jurisdiction 5 times. Each time the judge just says denied. Doesn't require the prosecutor to prove jurisdiction. And it's just been going on like that. They violate so many Constitution and Texas laws.
So Texas laws are not your laws. They're not there for you. Okay. And when you use the term constitutional rights, kind of, right? But you have to understand that it's all trust law and it's all contract law, even the constitutional rights thing. Okay. So as one of the sovereigns, one of we the people, You don't have constitutional rights. You have the divine right of kings. Okay. You're uninhibited if you know how to enforce it. And so when you go into court and claim constitutional rights, right, that's not a claim on which relief can be granted. Now, if you go through and write an affidavit defining clearly in the smallest terms possible all of the things that were wrong that happened to you, no due process, you didn't get read your rights, invasion of private property, USC 241, 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. What you just described, there's a list as long as my arm. There's probably $150 million worth of fines that you could hit that precinct, just the precinct alone, where that SWAT team originated from, right? But what you have to do is you have to remember that when you go into their arena for remedy, they are not going to give it to you because you are not stating a claim on which relief can be granted. Because when you show up and start talking about constitutional rights without going through the private administrative remedy process first, defined in the Administrative Procedures Act, with your affidavits, with your claims in commerce, with your damages, with your tort claims, going through that, sending the affidavit to the proper individuals, which in this instance would be the chief or the CEO of the precinct where that SWAT team originated from, the individuals that were on the SWAT team in their private capacity, because they needed to have an oath of office on file to be able to even assume that kind of authority. And if they don't, they're in violation. That's a crime. That's a felony. And then the Secretary of State that authorized that law enforcement entity, the governor, and the attorney general would all be getting these affidavits if I was in your situation, including the jail that they put you in, whoever the CEO of that is, and that's available on Dun & Bradstreet. The principal will be listed with the address on Dun & Bradstreet. You have to go to email or FOIA that department in order to get their Dun & Bradstreet. And that defines that entity in commerce. And so what you do then is you write out the story beforehand, right? And then you go through and do you have the National Liberty Alliance books yet?
No.
Okay, get on Amazon. There's 4 of them. And get those. And the primary USC Title 18 criminal codes that are violated when something like this happens are all in there. Probably wouldn't hurt to go ahead and study Title 18 and Title 42 as well. And then what you can do is you write the story down, and then you study the Title 18 codes, and then you kind of take your story with all the information in it, right? And then you extrapolate it out to an affidavit. And the beginning of the affidavit of truth and fact. And then you state the intent of the affidavit to provide remedy in the administrative procedures process using established law and tort claim remedy. And then you tell the story, but you tell the story in affidavit format, which would be something to the degree of I am a living man. I domicile at near blah 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 blah. Whatever the address was. This incident occurred on this date at this time. No warrant was produced for the action performed by SWAT team, blah, 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 which comprised of the individuals, their badge numbers, this, that, and the other. You tell the story. And so the way you do it is you put all of that information, you itemize it. Event number 1, event number 2, event number 3, or fact number, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way down. And so number 1, I am a living man, American, private citizen. That's 1. That's the first thing. And you sign all of this under penalty of perjury, all the facts that comprise, that make up the story that you wrote. And then you sign that under penalty of perjury. And part of your affidavit, after you send this off, after it's notarized, and you send it registered mail, because with a return receipt, because then that's certified proof of service, is that you charge them. You charge them with damages, and you don't charge them with jail time. You get paid. And what the process is in this, what your remedy is that they're going to ignore it. And so you write into your affidavit that this is a self-executing contract upon proof of service, registered mail delivery bond, RE, whatever your number is that you use to that individual, and and silence is acquiescence and agreeance to all the terms of, facts and stated conditions herein above. And then you say something to the effect of, you actually reference the case precedent where in commerce, truth is sovereign. Truth is expressed in the form of an affidavit. An affidavit must be rebutted by, the only way an affidavit can be satisfied is by agreement, rebuttal, nullification by a jury, or performance, payment. I mean, and that's established case law. Like, that's precedent. No judge can overturn that or ignore it, especially when you put it on the public record to make it judicially noticed. Okay. And so then you go through this and you make your affidavit rock solid in that regard, where it's self-executing. If they don't rebut it, then it stands as truth. And you go through that private administrative procedure process. And when they ignore you the third time, you go into the venue at the federal level to file for summary judgment. And you go in as a private citizen, and the case, your court of record is already created with the affidavit, the statement of facts, and using case law and precedent. Like, if you go to court to fight, you lose, right? You make your case and you win before you go to court. You tie the judge's hands before you get there using this process of case law. And then if they don't perform after you go in and get a summary judgment, they being the Secretary of State or the Department, whatever entity you're trying to, that was involved, that wronged you. And so in this instance, it would be the Attorney General, the governor's office, it would be the state itself. So what you end up doing then is you call the provost marshal at the nearest joint base, military base, closest to you, before you go into summary judgment. Okay. And you tell them what you're going to do. And you send the Judge Advocate General, JAG, a copy of your procedure and your court of record, which includes your certified proof of service. And you tell them what you're going to do. And you tell them that, hey, if this judge tries to throw this out, it's treason. And I'm going to charge him with treason in the courtroom, and I'm going to arrest his ass. And I'd like you on speed dial because I'd like you to come and force us and hang this motherfucker. And he's supposed to. And if they don't, well, you keep going. But you've got to be willing to endure the offense that they come at you with when you try to get this remedy process, right? Because they're not going to, they're fighting for their lives and they know it. And the only thing they've got is to charge you with nonsense, right? So that's the reason why you settle everything you can, right? You don't discharge these, these court cases. You settle them. That way they're closed. It's over. It's a done matter. It cannot be revisited. If you discharge it, it just means that it's tendered to a later date and they can come back for remedy later, right? So when you interact with officialdom and the cop pulls you over without probable cause, uses as emergency light while you're traveling, if you're going to the grocery store and you have a driver's license, you show it to them, and you haven't filed your paperwork, you've admitted that you're in commerce. If you try to get this remedy after doing all of that, you're never going to get it. They're just going to keep coming after you, right? You've got to be rock solid in your bulwark, if you will, of keeping them out, keeping yourself out of the public when you interact with these people. And the cops don't know it. Most of the circuit judges don't know it. Most of the DAs don't know it. When you start to get up to the federal level is when you start to get people that do know it, from what I've been told. And so a lot of the times you have to be prepared to be incarcerated and warehoused. But you got to know this stuff inside and out so that when you get arraigned, you can ask the right questions.
Because you mentioned the federal court. Was that the federal district court?
Yeah, just because that's where you'll find access to being able to put all these circuit court judges and the cops and then all these police stations and SWAT teams into the box that the Constitution is supposed to put government in, right? Which is where you'll find constitutional rights as a private citizen, which is either a beneficiary to the Constitution, or if you get a certified copy from the National Archives of the Declaration of Independence and sign your name to it, your autograph with your blood seal, bring that in, then you are a fiduciary. Then you are an executor.
Nice.
It's much better to be a beneficiary.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
You got it. But yeah, you won't get remedy in their court. I mean, hardly ever. Not unless you hire a bar card and their heart's in the right place, and then it's law. I mean, it's nonsense. You don't really get remedy. You don't get relief in their jurisdiction unless they want to give it to you. You have to build your own court of record, and you have to call out the fraud, and you have to have your island built, so to speak, of all these affidavits that prove your status. And then you have to make sure that you use the proper diction. And by the time you go to the courts to get your summary judgment enforced, you need to have it airtight, rock solid, already done. You're just going there for enforcement. You're going there for performance of your public servants. That's all you're going there for. The matter's already settled. They've already agreed to it through tacit agreement, through the acquiescence and denial of judgment. The matter's already over. They didn't respond. They lost. He who leaves the battlefield first loses. That's another commercial maximum commercial contract law. So if they didn't respond, they lost. But getting enforcement and getting remedy and enforcement, you have to be willing to put the judge under arrest and the bailiff. So you don't want to go in alone. And make sure that the provost marshal knows first what you're doing. Send him all the paperwork. It's got to be rock solid and airtight.
So I have, hopefully we got time. I got 3 questions. First one is there a way to contact you? Do you help in situations, or you just basically just share information, or?
I'd be willing to help consult. But I've got a mentor who's, my ability to craft paperwork I'm still working on it, and I use mostly his stuff. And the guy's been doing this for a real long time, and he's got a little bit different philosophy from KL there, but on a few things. But I think that they're both very, knowledgeable individuals, and so for the most part, for paperwork, what I do is I refer people back to my mentor. So if you want the affidavits to get out of the IRS, I send you to him. You deal with him directly. I didn't craft them. They're not mine to sell, to give away. And so most of the knowledge that I have is from that guy's guidance. And the last thing I want to do is make it so he's not interested in helping me out anymore. And so, but I'm currently, so I was boarded by the Coast Guard last spring on my boat here in Alaska, and I didn't have any paying customers on board. So I'm in the process right now of going through this. I have one more notice to send the Coast Guard, and 15 days, I'm going to give them I'm going to give them 10 days. So about 15 days after that, I'm going to go into the local courts and ask for enforcement. And it's going to be a $32 million settlement. That's what I'm charging for. $32,800,000. And so, you guys were talking about cars and utility bills and all this kind of stuff. I highly recommend that you don't even try. I mean, because the battle is the battle, right? And whether it's over a $500 utility bill or a $50 million settlement, or, this story that I just heard about the SWAT, my goodness, not even the personal injury alone, but once you establish in courts through your own court of record and get it recognized through summary judgment that they were wrong, the personal injury alone is going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Just one traffic violation. You get pulled over for something stupid, rolling through a stop sign, right? The car's perfect, nothing wrong. $2,000 a minute after warning. If they try to make you sign anything, it's $50,000. If they use your name, it's $250,000 per occurrence. If they cuff you and warehouse you, it's $2,000 a minute. Trevant versus City of Miami is $75,000 an hour, and that was in 1985. So you can add inflation. So if you want to try to monetize this, right, which I do, I highly recommend just making sure that your island, so to speak, is rock solid. Get the affidavits rock solid, and then go test them out on something. You know, something with a really low consequence. Gain some confidence and the ability to think when you're in the courtroom, right? Getting scrutinized by a judge, right? I mean, like, adrenaline's running, and they're talking about locking you up, throwing away the key. You know, gain a little dexterity in actually the real-time interaction with officials on this stuff. And then, I mean, there's hardly, maybe a month you can go through. I mean, like, imagine if you put private plates on your car. It wouldn't take but a week or two driving around. You're going to have an interaction with some roadie or statey or cop that's going to be worth 10, 15 million bucks. Easy. And that's if they behave.
Wow. Okay. All right. So the other one is do you know anything about, or anybody that you know working on a tribal status?
Tribal status. I actually am talking with a guy here locally about a little bit of thing. It's a pretty interesting concept. There's a giant weakness in the purchase contract with the state of Alaska, and and so I'm kind of working on that with him. They haven't really, I don't think they really get it yet, what I'm trying to go at, what the opportunity is. But I also know that anything tribal, the people that are on those tribal boards they're greased up big time, and they're personally invested in making sure that the current infrastructure stays the way that it is. So, I mean, but I don't really have a dog in that fight. I mean, I'm
right.
My lineage is not Native American, that's for sure. So, but why do you ask?
Well, I know that there's, I've been seeing some things about setting up a tribal status where you could get actually a passport with actually a tribal, the tribal, like Missourian or Texan, and also your tribal status as a trust is also listed with the United States Postal Service office.
I wouldn't do that. I personally would not do that. And the reason why is because as one of we the people, as a live breathing man or woman who was born in one of the states of the Union, you're already sovereign. Tribal status is conquered people. I mean, what I'm going to do after I get when I got into this and decided to stand up and got myself in some hot water before I knew how to do any of this crap, my wife ended up leaving me over this stuff. And so I'm actually in the process right now of annulling the original marriage contract. And that's something that you have to do because that's the contract that binds you. So that's a really good way to learn the administrative procedure process and learn, go through that. That's a really good way to do it because all you're doing is you're just annulling an original contract. That's all you're doing is gaining standing to rescission the signature on that contract with the state because of non-disclosure of terms and conditions. And so once you do that, you have dexterity inside the process, right? It becomes a little bit more familiar. It's a very low consequence failure mode. Like what are they going to do if it doesn't work? Well, you're still married. Haha. All right. Well, yeah, let's try again.
What if you're divorced?
The same thing. And a divorce is a addendum to the original contract is all it is. And that's the reason why you still have to pay her. Because, the state is the principal. The state that issued the license is the principal in that contract. The husband is the primary. And the primary. And the wife is enjoined as a third party. And so when there's a divorce, both the individuals are still married to the state, right?
Yeah.
There's just a change in the domicile and in the residence in between the two enjoined parties that are primary and tertiary to the contract. And so when you annul the original contract, all the divorce agreement goes away too. But you need to have, if your kids are under 18, you need to have a UCC additional collateral, UCC3 filed and accepted on the public record, and notice the Secretary of State in the state where you were married in order to be able to have claim to the kids. Because until they're able to go in and rebut all the presumptions on their own, there's still surety to that birth certificate. So you need to have first in line, first in time commercial claim to that ans legis, that state file number that's on the birth certificate of your kids. Otherwise, CPS can come in and do all kinds of crap to you. They still can. They still can. But if a judge decides to award custody, they have to pay you whatever you've said you've entered into on the UCCs. Okay. Mine, I put 500 on each one of my kids. So when I do this, if a CPS tries to come and take the kids, or if they try to give custody to my ex, then they got to pay me $500 million per kid. The state does.
Part of that tribal stuff was too, one of the ladies that we were trying to help, she actually has a tribal UN card for the Creek Nation. And
conquered people.
Yeah.
And all tribes are nonprofits. They're corporations. Don't do it.
Also,
sue the secretary. Okay, so fill out the DS-11 the way that it says with on copper moonshine stills, right?
Okay.
And include a true copy of all your affidavits that you use to define who you are as the living man, one of we the people, right? Self-determination, all the paperwork. Include all of that. Send it to him registered mail, and send him the money for a passport and say, send me back a credential that identifies me as one of we the people. Private citizen. And
so
when they don't do it, do the private administrative procedure remedy process, take it into court, get a summary judgment. Respondent would be the Secretary of State, whoever the Secretary of State is, which is used to be Blinken, whoever Trump put in there now, and make them perform. And put a clause in there that if they don't, they owe you a couple $1 million for damages.
Would you want, Jason?
Rubio.
Oh, Rubio.
Marco Rubio. Right.
Okay.
But you got to get that marriage contract annulled first. You've got to get out of that. Otherwise, they won't. Even with a tribal thing. Because I mean, what's more? What is a better standing? One of we the people, or a conquered an individual that's recognized by the corporation that the Constitution created, right? That can only exist in commerce.
Okay. So our friend who's in she actually got a life sentence for crimes that it didn't fit it. Judge was biased, prosecutor looks like they were working together. They both got in trouble, and they're retrying the case, but we're trying to help her get out. They got her for it was. They added money laundering after the fact.
Okay. Distinction. Living woman and Slegis, two separate entities. Rule 17 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. I object to these proceedings for lack of ratification of commencement. Real party and interest.
Okay.
Where's the crime? Where's the victim? Where's the tort? Okay, if this is a tort claim, produce evidence of the damages. If this is a breach claim, produce the contract that I knowingly entered into that has my wedding signature on it. If this is a criminal charge, produce the victim. Otherwise, dismiss the case.
Well, they produced like 300 witnesses.
Okay, so for what?
What was that? The elderly task force in Texas.
A financial company that specializes in elder.
That's okay, guys. That's a corporate entity. Then what needs to happen is she needs to file, go through the redemption process, and that's the redemption manual. You can find it online, PDF. File the UCC1, go through that process, do the commercial security agreement, power of attorney, the indemnity, hold harmless, all the stuff that's in there, and then what she can do is go in as the agent for the Enslegius, accept for value the charges, and discharge the debt under HJR 192 of the 73rd Congress with a commercial international bill of exchange on a promissory note.
Okay.
And then tell her to take in her birth certificate endorsed under UCC 3205, page of the order of. So here you go. Here's the defendant.
Yeah, she has her birth certificate authenticated.
No. That's the long form. You can't authenticate a short form.
Oh,
If you authenticate the long form, see, that's the part of it that I'm trying to tell you is that all of these charges are in commerce. The living woman can't exist in commerce. It's not possible, right? So if there is indeed some 300 witnesses that are saying that that's a tort claim, except for value the damages, the charges, and ask the judge to discharge the debt. And then hypothecate the value of the first in line, first in time claim in the commercial chamber on the UCC to be the collateral and the surety to the bond to discharge the debt until the judge can do it.
okay.
I agree with thine adversary. When it's out in commerce, it's all just paperwork.
Yeah.
All it is, right? And the only way that they can, and even if they go through the court, go through the whole thing, if there isn't a physically harmed human being, right, with an affidavit signed under penalty of perjury that says what happened and what the damages were, then there's no way that they can jail her. They can't, not unless she agrees to it, but it takes 3 signatures to put someone in jail under a statutory charge, right? And it takes the prosecutor, the defending attorney, and the judge. Well, if you fire the defending attorney, say, I'll accept counsel, but not representation, I can't be represented. I'm a child of God. I'm here as the agent to the Enslegius. And I filed these, these documents that define my status, and I will not be tricked to engage to be the surety of the bonds. I've offered this indemnity clause. I've offered a hypothecation to the commercial security agreement, specially endorsed under UCC 3205. Where's the controversy, Your Honor? Accept it for value. Discharge the debt. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Just 1 second here. I got to take this.
All right.
Hey, buddy.
Oh, God.
What you doing?
Hey, I got it. What's up, buddy?
I
I got hung up. I'll be there soon. Okay. Bye-bye. Love you.
Get out of the car. Get out
All right.
of the car.
Oh,
Well, just give me yours. And I'll give it.
I'm going to be available again, guys. And I would love to talk with those other 2 dudes a little bit, but that was my son. I got to get out of here pretty soon.
Okay.
And,
Thank you very much.
Can we talk to you again? In the
oh,
near
absolutely.
future?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We sure
I'm going
appreciate
to put my email in the chat here. So keep my email, and you guys can reach out to me.
Yeah. He's got to put an email in the chat.
Okay, that's my
Okay.
email address. And so feel free to reach out. Let's stay in touch. Keep me informed, and any questions, I'll reference you to to what I think I know, and you can take it from there. But get a copy of the Administrative Procedures Act.
So, okay. Where's
It's off there. We can get it.
Messages right there.
Cody.
Yeah.
It's Cody, then Craig. It came off the screen. I didn't get the whole thing.
Cody Craig Loomis at proton.me. I think that's it.
You can text it to me and I'll pass it on to.
Okay, that works.
We know you got another call, so thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, guys. Good hearing from you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Jerry. Yeah, Dale. What do you say? There's no time.
Oh, there, you know what's come back and answer.
Right, but I mean.
Recording stopped.
Was it?